Taehyung refuses a powerful global trend, forcing RM to reveal a truth that could change BTS forever. Taehyung refused to follow a global trend. What RM said next changed everything. "Turn that camera off." Taehyung's voice cut through the rehearsal room so sharply that even the music seemed to disappear. The bass stopped in the middle of a beat. 7 reflections froze beneath the white studio lights, surrounded by mirrors, cables, water bottles, discarded towels, and the faint metallic smell of equipment that had been running for hours. Outside the glass wall, staff members who had been whispering suddenly went silent. The director lowered his tablet. "What?" Taehyung did not move. His chest was rising and falling rapidly from the choreography. Sweat traced a thin line from his temple to his jaw, disappearing beneath the collar of his black shirt. His hands were clenched at his sides. "I said turn it off." The camera operator looked instinctively toward the production manager. Nobody moved. Jungkook, standing a few steps behind Taehyung, slowly lowered his water bottle. Jimin's eyebrows tightened. J-Hope looked from the camera to Taehyung. Jin stopped wiping his face. Suga, who had been sitting against the wall with one knee raised, lifted his eyes. And RM said nothing. That silence was what frightened Taehyung most. Because Namjoon rarely stayed silent when something was clearly wrong. The director finally stepped closer. "Taehyung, this is only the rehearsal recording." "I know. It's not being released." "I know. It's part of the global campaign preparation. Every artist involved is doing it." Taehyung stared at him. "That doesn't mean I have to." A nervous murmur moved through the room. The director glanced toward the production manager again. "This trend is bigger than one artist. Everyone participating is expected to record the same short-form challenge. It's already being picked up internationally." Taehyung gave a humorless smile. "Then let everyone else do it." The music remained silent. For several seconds, nobody breathed comfortably. The campaign had been presented to them as something harmless. A global music initiative. A synchronized performance challenge. One dance. One signature gesture. One short video. Thousands of artists around the world were participating, and the numbers were rising every hour. The campaign's logo had appeared on billboards in New York, London, Tokyo, Paris, Los Angeles, Seoul, and Singapore. Major labels were encouraging their artists to join. Influencers were calling it the biggest cultural trend of the year. And BTS had been offered the most prominent position. The problem was not the dance. The problem was the final gesture. Every participant was required to place one hand over the heart, raise the other toward the camera, and say the campaign's 3-word slogan. Taehyung had refused. Not because he disliked the trend. Not because he wanted attention. Because of something he had noticed in the campaign contract. Something nobody else had mentioned. Something he had discovered at 3 in the morning, while reading the documents alone in a dark hotel room. He had seen a clause. A single sentence buried beneath pages of promotional language. The campaign organizers were permitted to repurpose participant footage for future cultural, commercial, technological, and behavioral initiatives. Behavioral. That word had stayed inside Taehyung's head ever since. He had searched the phrase. He had found nothing clear. Then he had searched the organization behind the campaign. Still nothing. But one thing had bothered him. The organization wasn't merely a music foundation. It was connected to several technology companies. And one of those companies had recently launched a system designed to analyze audience behavior through entertainment content. Taehyung had closed the laptop. He had barely slept. Now, under the studio lights, Everyone was looking at him as if he had suddenly become the difficult one. The director sighed. Taehyung, this is becoming unnecessarily complicated. No, Taehyung said quietly. It became complicated when I read the contract. The director's expression changed. What exactly did you read? Taehyung looked toward RM. Namjoon finally stood. Let's stop for a minute. The director frowned. RM. I said stop. Namjoon did not raise his voice. He didn't need to. The room obeyed. The music technician muted everything. The camera operator stepped backward. Staff members exchanged uncertain looks. Namjoon walked toward Taehyung. What did you find? Taehyung swallowed. I don't know yet. That isn't what I asked. I know. Then tell me. Taehyung looked at the floor. The studio lights reflected in the polished wood. I think they're collecting more than promotional footage. Silence. Jungkook slowly set his bottle down. What do you mean? Taehyung looked at him. I mean, I don't think this is just a trend. Suga's expression hardened. Why? Because the contract doesn't say the footage is only for promotion. Jimin stepped closer. What does it say? Taehyung hesitated. Then he pulled out his phone. I took a screenshot. He opened the document. His fingers were shaking. Not enough for anyone else to notice. But RM noticed. He always noticed. Taehyung zoomed in. The clause appeared on the screen. The words were small, cold, legal, and completely ordinary at first glance, until Namjoon read them twice. His face changed. What? J-Hope leaned forward. What does it say? Namjoon didn't answer immediately. Taehyung watched his eyes move across the sentence. Then back. Then across it again. Finally, Namjoon looked up. This isn't normal. The director immediately interrupted. It is standard legal language. Namjoon turned toward him. Standard for what? The director hesitated. For international media campaigns. No. Namjoon's voice remained calm. That's not what this says. The director's jaw tightened. RM, you're not a lawyer. No. Namjoon looked down at the phone. But I can read. Suga stood. That was when the atmosphere changed completely. Because Yoongi rarely stood unless he had decided something mattered. He walked toward them and held out his hand. Give me the phone. Taehyung passed it to him. Suga read the clause. His eyes narrowed. Who approved this? Nobody answered. Jin looked toward the staff. Who? The production manager cleared his throat. The company legal team reviewed the agreement. Which company? Suga asked. Another pause. Our management. Did they know about this clause? They reviewed the full contract. That wasn't my question. The production manager looked uncomfortable. Suga stared at him. Did they know? I assume so. That means no. Suga handed the phone back. Jimin looked between them. So what happens if we refuse? The director's expression hardened. You're misunderstanding the situation. Then explain it, Jimin said. The director opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Taehyung watched him. That was the moment his fear became certainty. Something was wrong. Not because the campaign was secretly evil. Not because someone was plotting against them. But because nobody in the room seemed willing to answer one simple question. Why did the campaign need permanent rights to their behavioral data? Taehyung's stomach tightened. Namjoon turned toward the staff. Everyone outside. The director blinked. What? Everyone who isn't BTS. RM, this is an official rehearsal. And we're taking a break. You can't simply. We can. Namjoon's eyes were steady. For the first time that evening, Taehyung saw something in his leader's face that he recognized immediately. Fear. Not panic. Not confusion. Fear sharpened into responsibility. The staff slowly left. The door closed. 7 members remained. The studio suddenly felt much larger. Jin exhaled. Well, Suga crossed his arms. Someone better start talking. J-Hope looked at Taehyung. You knew something was strange before today. Taehyung nodded. How long? 3 days. 3 days, Jungkook repeated. Taehyung looked ashamed. I didn't want to make everyone nervous. Jungkook's expression softened. You should have told us. I know. No. Jungkook stepped closer. You should have trusted us. Taehyung looked away. That sentence hurt more than he expected. Because Jungkook was right. He had spent 3 nights investigating alone. He had searched names, read articles, compared contracts, watched promotional videos frame by frame. He had even created a private folder on his laptop containing screenshots of the campaign's website before several pages suddenly changed. He had convinced himself he was protecting the others. But perhaps he had simply been afraid. Afraid that if he spoke and was wrong, everyone would think he had become paranoid. Afraid that if he was right, everything would become complicated. And most of all, afraid that the others would look at him differently. Jimin touched his shoulder. You don't have to carry everything alone. Taehyung looked at him. His eyes were suddenly wet. I wasn't trying to. Jimin gave him a small smile. You were. Taehyung laughed quietly despite himself. The tension cracked for half a second. Then RM sat on the floor. Show me everything. Taehyung sat opposite him. He opened his laptop. I started with the contract. The screen filled with documents. Then screenshots. Then archived web pages. Then a series of highlighted passages. I noticed that the campaign had 3 separate companies listed in its legal structure. Namjoon leaned closer. 3. Yeah. Suga sat beside him. Why? 1 is the foundation organizing the campaign. 1 handles media distribution. The 3rd handles something called audience intelligence. Jin frowned. That sounds harmless. It did. Taehyung clicked. A corporate website appeared. Until I found this. The page showed a description of the technology. Automated emotional response analysis. Audience engagement mapping. Behavioral prediction. J-Hope's face went still. Why would a music campaign need that? That's what I asked. Namjoon stared at the screen. Maybe they don't. Taehyung looked at him. What? Namjoon pointed at the contract. Maybe the campaign isn't the product. The room went silent. Suga slowly nodded. Then what's the product? Namjoon didn't answer. He looked at Taehyung. What exactly did you see? Taehyung opened another folder. This. A spreadsheet appeared. Thousands of entries. Artists. Countries. Campaign participation dates. Engagement percentages. Audience demographics. Estimated emotional reactions. Jungkook leaned forward. Where did you get that? I didn't. Everyone looked at him. Taehyung's voice became quieter. It was attached to one of the campaign's public files for less than an hour. Jimin stared. How did you find it? I was looking through the campaign server paths. Jin blinked. You hacked something? No. Taehyung shook his head. It was publicly accessible. Suga leaned back. That makes it worse. Taehyung nodded. The spreadsheet wasn't merely tracking views. It contained categories. Excitement, trust, fear, loyalty, resistance, influence. The words were arranged beside artist names. RM stared at the screen. Resistance. Taehyung nodded. They were measuring how audiences respond when artists refuse something. Nobody spoke. Then Yoongi whispered. So they already knew people would resist. Taehyung looked at him. Maybe. Namjoon's face hardened. No. Everyone turned toward him. Namjoon pointed at the spreadsheet. They didn't just predict resistance. He tapped one column. They categorized it. The room fell silent. J-Hope slowly sat down. Why? Namjoon stared at the screen. That's what we need to find out. For several minutes, nobody spoke. The air conditioner hummed overhead. Somewhere in the hallway, a cart rolled past. The sound seemed strangely distant. Taehyung stared at the spreadsheet. He had expected suspicion. He had expected anger. He had even expected someone to tell him he was overreacting. He had not expected Namjoon to understand immediately. That frightened him more. Namjoon. What if I'm wrong? Namjoon looked at him. You're allowed to be wrong. Taehyung's eyes dropped. But what if I cause trouble for everyone? You're allowed to cause trouble when something feels wrong. Taehyung looked up. Namjoon's expression softened. You know what scares me more than you refusing a trend? Taehyung shook his head. That you almost followed it because you were afraid to disappoint us. The words landed heavily. Jimin looked away. Yoongi's jaw tightened. Suga exhaled slowly. Namjoon continued. We've spent years being told that our responsibility is to keep moving, keep performing, keep smiling, keep adapting. Sometimes that's necessary. He paused. But adaptation isn't the same as obedience. Taehyung swallowed. Namjoon leaned forward. If something asks you to betray your instincts just because everyone else is doing it, then refusing isn't weakness. His voice became quieter. Sometimes refusing is the only way to find out who you really are. Taehyung stared at him. Nobody spoke. The sentence stayed in the room. Then Jin broke the silence. Okay. Everyone looked at him. Jin shrugged. I'm hungry, but I'm also curious. A small laugh escaped J-Hope. Suga shook his head. Only you could make this sound like a dinner problem. It is a dinner problem. Jin pointed toward the clock. We've been here for 6 hours. Yoongi smiled faintly. I could eat. Of course you could. For the first time that night, Taehyung smiled. But the relief didn't last. Because Namjoon's phone vibrated. Once. Then again. Then again. He looked down. 3 messages. His expression changed. What? Jimin noticed immediately. Namjoon didn't answer. He opened the first message. Then the second. Then the third. Suga watched him. Namjoon. Namjoon slowly locked his phone. It's from the company. What do they want? He looked at Taehyung. They know you refused. Taehyung's smile disappeared. How? They were watching the rehearsal. J-Hope stood. Watching. Namjoon nodded. The room's internal camera feed. Taehyung looked toward the ceiling. The small security camera near the corner suddenly seemed much larger. Jungkook's expression darkened. Were they recording? Namjoon didn't answer. That was enough. Taehyung felt cold. Not fear this time. Something deeper. Violation. He had spent days worrying about a camera pointed at a stage. He had never considered the cameras pointed at them when they weren't performing. Suga stood beneath the security camera. Who has access? Namjoon looked at his phone again. The campaign's production partner. Suga laughed once. There was no humor in it. So refusing the public challenge was caught on a private camera. Apparently. And now they know exactly who refused first. Namjoon nodded. Taehyung stared at his own reflection in the darkened monitor. He looked exhausted. Older than he felt. I'll do it. Everyone turned toward him. What? Jimin asked. I'll do the challenge. No, Jungkook said immediately. Taehyung looked at him. If this is causing trouble. No. Jungkook stepped closer. You don't get to protect us by giving them what they want. Taehyung's eyes filled. I don't want you all to suffer because of me. Jungkook's voice softened. Then stop deciding alone. Taehyung looked at the others. Jin nodded. J-Hope gave him a tired smile. Suga said nothing. He didn't need to. And RM simply sat there, watching Taehyung with an expression that felt almost painfully familiar. Then Namjoon spoke. We're not doing the challenge. Taehyung blinked. All of us. All of us. Even if they pressure the company. Yes. Even if the campaign threatens to remove us. Yes. Even if people online say we're arrogant. Namjoon looked at him. Yes. Taehyung's voice cracked. Why? Namjoon stood. Because the moment one of us has to betray himself to keep the group comfortable, we're no longer protecting the group. He walked toward the door. We're protecting the image of the group. He placed his hand on the handle. Then he looked back. And those are not the same thing. The others remained silent. Outside, the city continued moving. Traffic lights changed. Cars passed beneath the building. Millions of people were probably watching the campaign videos without ever knowing what was happening inside this room. The world saw 7 performers. 7 polished smiles. 7 people who seemed almost impossible to shake. But inside that studio, they were simply 7 exhausted men trying to decide whether saying no was worth the consequences. Taehyung looked down at his phone. The campaign video was still open. Millions of views. Thousands of comments. Artists from every corner of the world participating. The trend was everywhere. For a moment, he understood why people followed it. It was easier. Safer. Less lonely. Then he looked at RM. Namjoon gave him a small nod. Not a command. Not reassurance. Permission. Permission to trust the discomfort inside his chest. Taehyung slowly closed the video. The screen went black. His reflection stared back at him. For the first time in 3 days, he didn't feel like he was standing alone. Later that night, long after the studio lights had been switched off, Taehyung sat beside the window of the van on the way home. Seoul moved outside in ribbons of white and red. His forehead rested lightly against the glass. Jungkook sat across from him, half asleep. Jimin was scrolling silently through his phone. Jin had finally gotten his food. J-Hope was listening to music. Suga had his eyes closed. Namjoon sat at the front. Nobody talked about the campaign. Not yet. Taehyung watched a giant digital billboard flash the campaign slogan across a building. For a second, he wondered whether he had made the biggest mistake of his career. Then the billboard disappeared behind another building. The city became dark again. And in that darkness, Taehyung remembered Namjoon's words. Adaptation wasn't obedience. Refusing wasn't weakness. Sometimes the smallest word could become the loudest thing a person ever said. Taehyung closed his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. Jungkook opened one eye. "For what?" Taehyung smiled faintly. "For not letting me change my mind." Jungkook closed his eyes again. "You're welcome." The van continued through the sleeping city. No cameras followed them. No stage lights waited ahead. No audience demanded anything. For a few quiet minutes, they were simply themselves. And Taehyung finally allowed his shoulders to relax. He didn't know what would happen tomorrow. He didn't know how far the campaign would go. He didn't know why someone had been measuring resistance. But for tonight, he knew one thing. He had said no. And he had not said it alone. The next morning, Taehyung woke to 47 missed calls, 19 unread messages, and one headline that made his stomach drop before he had even put his glasses on. He stared at the glowing screen in the darkness of his bedroom, listening to the rain tapping against the window, and read the headline again because his tired mind refused to believe what his eyes were showing him. BTS member refuses global campaign. Internal dispute THRATNS major partnership. His thumb froze above the screen. For several seconds he didn't breathe. Then another notification appeared. RM had sent only 4 words. Don't answer anyone yet. Taehyung sat upright. The room suddenly felt colder. He opened the article. The first paragraph claimed that an unnamed BTS member had rejected a globally recognized cultural initiative for personal reasons, while another paragraph suggested that the refusal had created tension within the group. The article included details that had never been made public. It mentioned the rehearsal. It mentioned the argument. It even mentioned the exact moment when Taehyung had told the camera operator to turn the camera off. He lowered the phone slowly. Someone had leaked the private rehearsal. His heartbeat became louder than the rain. Another message arrived, this time from Jimin. "Are you awake?" Before Taehyung could respond, his phone rang. "Jungkook." He answered immediately. "Taehyung." Jungkook's voice was low. "You saw it?" "Yeah, don't read the comments." "I already did." "Taehyung, I'm fine." "You're lying." Taehyung stared at the rain sliding down the glass. "I'm not fine." There was silence on the other end. Then Jungkook said, "We're coming over. All of you, obviously. You don't have to. We know." The call ended. Taehyung threw the blanket aside and stood. He had barely reached the kitchen when another notification appeared. This one wasn't from the members. It was from an unknown number. "One sentence. You should have followed the trend." Taehyung stopped moving. The message disappeared before he could screenshot it. A second later, another arrived. "You were warned." His hand tightened around the phone. Then the screen went black. "Taehyung." He turned. Namjoon stood in the doorway. He had entered so quietly that Taehyung hadn't heard him. Behind him were Jin, Suga, J-Hope, Jimin, and Jungkook. None of them looked rested. Namjoon's eyes went immediately to Taehyung's face. "You got a message." Taehyung nodded. "How did you know?" Namjoon walked closer. "Because I got one too." Suga's expression hardened. "So did I." Jin held up his phone. "Me too." J-Hope looked pale. "Same." Jimin slowly lifted his screen. "All of us." Jungkook stepped forward. "What did yours say?" Taehyung looked at them. "You should have followed the trend." Nobody spoke. Namjoon's jaw tightened. "Mine said your refusal has consequences." Suga's eyes narrowed. "Mine said the group cannot protect everyone." Jin looked down at his phone again. "Mine said one person can destroy 7 years." J-Hope whispered. "Mine said people are watching." Jimin swallowed. "Mine said he was never supposed to notice." Everyone turned toward him. Taehyung's face drained of color. Suga asked. "It didn't say who." Jimin shook his head. "Just that." Namjoon took a slow breath. "Nobody replies." "What about the company?" Jin asked. "I'm already calling them." Namjoon pulled out his phone. The call connected almost immediately. "This is RM." He listened. His expression became colder. No, I'm asking who leaked the rehearsal footage. A pause. Don't tell me you don't know. Another pause. Then find out. His voice remained controlled, but his knuckles had turned white. And I want the access logs for every camera in that building from yesterday. He stopped listening. No, not later, now. He ended the call. Suga stared at him. What did they say? They said the footage wasn't leaked from the company. Then where? They're investigating. That's not an answer. I know. Taehyung sat down at the kitchen table. He felt strangely detached from his own body. His hands were cold, his mouth was dry. Maybe I should make a statement. 6 heads turned toward him. No, Namjoon said. If I explain why I refused, no. But people are already blaming us. Let them. Taehyung looked at him. You don't understand. Namjoon sat across from him. I understand exactly. No, you don't. Taehyung's voice rose unexpectedly. You weren't the one who stopped the rehearsal. You weren't the one everyone stared at like you had suddenly become impossible to work with. You weren't the one who caused this. Namjoon didn't flinch. You're right. Taehyung blinked. What? I wasn't. Namjoon leaned forward. But I'm the leader, which means when something happens to one of us, it happens to all of us. Taehyung looked away. That's not fair. Neither is what they're doing. The room became silent. Suga finally spoke. They're trying to make you apologize before anyone understands what happened. Exactly, Namjoon said. And if you apologize now, they win. Taehyung looked at him sharply. What if I don't care about winning? Then care about why you refused. That sentence struck harder than anger would have. Taehyung lowered his head. I was scared. Jimin moved closer. Of what? Taehyung stared at the table. That I was seeing something nobody else could see. His voice became quieter. I thought maybe I was paranoid. Yoongi pulled out the chair beside him. You weren't. I didn't know that. You do now. Do I? Taehyung looked up. Someone leaked a private rehearsal. Someone sent all 7 of us messages. Someone knew exactly what I said. Suga's voice was flat. And someone wants you to regret refusing. J-Hope paced toward the window. This is getting serious. It was serious yesterday, Suga replied. We just didn't know how serious. Jin looked at Namjoon. What's the campaign saying? Namjoon opened his phone. Nothing official. Nothing. Nothing. That's worse, Jin said. They're letting the rumors spread. Namjoon nodded. Exactly. Taehyung's phone vibrated again. Everyone looked at it. He didn't want to touch it. Open it, Suga said. Why? Because whatever it is, we need to know. Taehyung unlocked the screen. A file had arrived. No sender. No message, just a video. His stomach twisted. He tapped it. The screen showed yesterday's rehearsal, not the official camera angle, a different angle high above the room. The image was slightly distorted. Taehyung could see all 7 members. He could hear himself saying, turn that camera off. Then the video paused. A red circle appeared around his face. Underneath it, a sentence appeared. Subject displays elevated resistance behavior under social pressure. Jimin whispered, what the hell? The video continued. Each member was labeled. RM, high influence. SUGA, high skepticism. J-Hope, group cohesion indicator. JIMIN. Emotional response amplifier. Jin. Stabilization tendency. JUNGKOOK. Loyalty reinforcement. TAHYUNG. Resistance trigger. The room went completely still. Yoongi stood abruptly. Turn it off. Taehyung couldn't move. Namjoon reached across and closed the video. Nobody watches that again. They profiled us, J-Hope whispered. Not just us, Suga said. Look at the labels. Namjoon looked at him. What? They've been studying group behavior. How do you know? Suga pointed to the screen. Those aren't fan observations. Those are psychological categories. Jimin's face had gone pale. Why would anyone spend this much money studying us? Suga looked toward Taehyung. Maybe they weren't studying us. Then who? Everyone. Namjoon stood. We need evidence. We have evidence, Jin said. No, we have suspicious material. Namjoon picked up his coat. We need something that cannot be dismissed as speculation. Taehyung looked at him. Where are you going? To the office. Suga stood immediately. I'm coming. Me too, J-Hope said. All of us, Yoongi added. Namjoon shook his head. No, you stay here. Why? Because if this is being monitored, putting all 7 of us in one place is exactly what they might expect. Suga's eyes narrowed. Then what are you planning? Namjoon looked at Taehyung. I'm going to find out who had access to the footage. And if they refuse, Suga asked. Namjoon's expression didn't change. Then we stop asking. The drive to the company building felt different from every other morning. The streets were crowded, but Taehyung barely noticed them. His phone kept vibrating with headlines. Some praised his courage. Others called him arrogant. One article claimed he had lost faith in the group's direction. Another suggested internal conflict between him and RM. A third claimed that BTS might be divided over whether to participate. "They're manufacturing a fight," Jimin said from beside him. "They want people to believe we're fighting." Taehyung stared out the window. "Why? Because conflict sells." "No," Taehyung shook his head. "This is more than that." Jimin looked at him. "What do you mean?" "Look at the wording." Jimin opened one of the articles. Taehyung pointed. "They keep saying I refuse because I didn't want to participate." "Yes, but that's not what happened." "I know. They removed the contract." Jimin's expression changed. "You're right." Taehyung leaned closer. "Every article says I rejected the trend. None mention the clause. Because they don't want people asking about it." Jimin looked at him. "Then that's what we ask." The car stopped. Security opened the gate. The building rose above them in steel and glass. Cameras turned as they entered. Taehyung instinctively looked up. One of them rotated slightly. He stopped walking. "What's wrong?" Jimin asked. "That camera, what about it?" "It wasn't there yesterday." Security approached. "Sir," Taehyung pointed. "When was that installed?" The guard looked upward. "I'm not sure." "Find out." The guard hesitated. Jimin stepped beside Taehyung. "Please." The guard nodded and walked away. Inside, the lobby was unusually quiet. Employees glanced at them and quickly looked away. A receptionist stood when Namjoon approached. "The legal team is expecting you." "Who told you that?" "The executive office." Namjoon's eyes narrowed. "We didn't schedule a meeting. They said you were coming." "Who exactly?" The receptionist hesitated. "Mr. Han." Namjoon stopped. Taehyung had never heard the name before. Suga had. His face changed. "Han Seojun," the receptionist nodded. "You know him?" Taehyung asked. Suga didn't answer immediately. "He used to work with one of our international partners." Namjoon looked at him. "Used to, 3 years ago." "Why did he leave?" Suga's eyes remained fixed on the receptionist. "Officially, strategic restructuring." Unofficially, Suga's voice became quiet. "He was involved in a data project." The receptionist suddenly looked nervous. "Mr. Han is waiting upstairs." Namjoon nodded. "Then let's go." The elevator doors closed. Nobody spoke. The numbers climbed. 5th floor, 6th, 7th. Taehyung watched the numbers. "Why does that name sound familiar?" Suga looked at him. "Because you've probably seen it." "Where?" "In the contract." Taehyung's head snapped toward him. "What?" Suga pulled out his phone. "I searched the corporate registry last night." He showed them a document. A name appeared among several advisory board members, Han Seojun. "He's connected to the campaign's technology partner," Suga said. Namjoon stared at the screen. "And he's meeting us before the company lawyers." "Apparently." The elevator stopped. The doors opened. A man in his 40s stood at the end of the corridor, perfect suit, silver watch, calm expression. He smiled when he saw them. "RM." Namjoon walked toward him. "Mr. Han, please, Seojun is fine." "I'd rather keep it professional." Han smiled. "Of course." His eyes moved toward Taehyung. "And you must be the reason we're all here." Taehyung said nothing. Han's smile remained. "I've heard a great deal about you." Suga stepped forward. "Then you've heard enough." Han looked at him. "Suga, don't call me that like we're friends." Han's smile faded slightly. "Understood." Namjoon gestured toward the conference room. "Let's talk." They entered. The room had glass walls overlooking the city. Han sat at the head of the table without being invited. Namjoon noticed, so did Suga. "You leaked the footage," Suga said. Han looked almost amused. "That's a serious accusation." "Then deny it." "I wasn't responsible for the leak." "Who was?" "I don't know." "Convenient." Han folded his hands. "You seem angry." "I am." "Why?" "Because someone recorded a private rehearsal and sent us psychological profiles." Han's expression changed for the first time. "Profiles." Namjoon placed his phone on the table and played the video. Han watched silently. When the labels appeared, his eyes narrowed. He looked at Taehyung. "Where did you get this?" Taehyung answered. "Someone sent it." Han looked back at the screen. "This file wasn't supposed to exist." Everyone froze. Namjoon leaned forward. "What did you say?" Han realized his mistake. "I said the file wasn't supposed to exist." "Why?" "Because the campaign doesn't use individual psychological profiling." Suga laughed coldly. "Then explain the labels." Han didn't answer. "Explain them." Han stood. "I think this meeting should end." Namjoon stood too. No, RM, you just admitted the file is real. I said nothing of the sort. You said it wasn't supposed to exist. That was a figure of speech. No, it wasn't. Namjoon's voice sharpened. You recognized it immediately. Han stared at him. You don't understand the system. Then explain it. I can't. Can't or won't. Han looked at Taehyung. You should have accepted the campaign. Taehyung's face hardened. Why? Because refusing publicly created unnecessary exposure. Exposure of what? Han said nothing. Taehyung stood. You know exactly what I found. Han looked at him. You shouldn't have searched the files. Why? Because some doors are better left closed. That's not an answer. It's advice. I didn't ask for advice. Han's expression became colder. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. Taehyung stepped closer. You filmed us without permission. The facility has security cameras. You analyzed us. Not personally. You categorized us. The system categorizes behavioral patterns. And what happens to the data? Han paused. It depends. On what? The project. Namjoon slammed his palm against the table. Everyone jumped. Enough. Han looked at him. You want the truth? Yes. Then listen carefully. Han leaned forward. The campaign is not designed to control artists. Then what is it designed to do? Predict audiences. For what purpose? Determine how influence spreads. The room became silent. Influence, Namjoon repeated. Entertainment influence, Han said. Political influence, consumer influence, social influence, emotional influence. The world has changed. Artists don't simply entertain anymore, they shape behavior. Taehyung felt sick. So we're test subjects. No, Han looked at him. Your data sources. Jimin's voice was barely audible. That's worse. Han ignored him. Every major artist generates patterns. Reactions, engagement, emotional shifts. The campaign creates a common environment where those patterns can be observed at scale. Suga leaned forward. And the trend? The trend is the environment. Taehyung's blood ran cold. So when everyone does the same thing, we can compare responses. Namjoon finished the sentence. Han nodded. Exactly. J-Hope stared at him. That's insane. It's science. It's exploitation, Suga snapped. Han looked at him. You use streaming analytics every day. That's not the same. Why not? Because people choose what to share. Han's eyes moved toward Taehyung. Do they? Silence. Taehyung remembered the contract, permanent rights, behavioral initiatives. He finally understood the wording. You wanted the videos to train the system. Han didn't answer. Didn't you? The footage contributes to the dataset. And refusal reduces the dataset. Correct. Taehyung's voice trembled. That's why you care. Han nodded. Your refusal wasn't damaging because you refused to dance. It was damaging because your refusal became a variable. Nobody moved. Namjoon slowly sat down. And now, Han looked at him. Now the system has identified resistance as a significant behavioral event. Because of him. Because of all of you. Suga's face darkened. You studied us before this. Yes. For how long? Han hesitated. Years. Taehyung closed his eyes. Years. The word echoed inside him. Years of performances. Interviews, live streams, behind-the-scenes footage, smiles, arguments, exhaustion, joy, every moment potentially converted into data, every habit observed, every reaction measured. He opened his eyes. You don't know us. Han looked at him. We know more than you think. Taehyung's hands trembled. No. Han's voice softened. We know when you're uncomfortable. No. We know when you become quiet before making a difficult decision. Stop. We know which members influence your choices. Stop. Know which one you look at when you're afraid. Taehyung's face went white. Stop. Jungkook moved between them. That's enough. Han stared at him. You're protective. Jungkook's eyes hardened. And you're creepy. Jin almost laughed despite the tension. Han's expression remained unchanged. You think this is about invading privacy? It is. It's about understanding human behavior. Without permission, the world has always done this. Suga stood. That's not a defense. No. Han looked around the room. Reality. Namjoon stood slowly. Then here's our reality. Han watched him. We're not participating. Han's expression remained calm. You may not have a choice. We always have a choice. Not when contracts are signed. The clause is unenforceable if it was concealed through misrepresentation. Han's smile disappeared. You're learning quickly. Namjoon stepped closer. And you're underestimating us. No. Han looked at Taehyung. I'm estimating him. Taehyung stared back. Then estimate this. Han waited. I'm still saying no. The silence afterward felt almost physical. Han's expression finally cracked. Not anger, something closer to frustration. You don't understand what happens next. Taehyung's voice was quiet. Maybe not. He looked toward Namjoon. But I know who I'll be standing beside. Namjoon looked at him, then at the others. One by one they stood. Han looked around the table. 7 men, 7 refusals. His eyes narrowed. You think unity protects you? Suga replied, no. Then what does? Suga looked directly at him. Knowing exactly why we're saying no. Han's phone rang. He glanced at it. Something in his face changed. He answered. Yes. He listened. Understood. He ended the call. Namjoon watched him. What happened? Han slipped the phone into his pocket. The campaign has released an official statement. Everyone checked their phones simultaneously. The headline appeared. BTS announces withdrawal from global cultural campaign. Taehyung stared. We didn't announce anything. Namjoon looked at the screen. His face became unreadable. No, Suga took his phone. They announced it for us. Jimin's eyes widened. They're making it look like we withdrew because of internal conflict. J-Hope whispered, look at the comments. Millions of reactions were appearing. Some accused BTS of arrogance. Some demanded explanations. Some defended Taehyung. Others claimed the group was collapsing. Then a second headline appeared. Industry sources claim member dispute caused BTS campaign exit. Taehyung's phone slipped slightly in his hand. They're blaming me. Namjoon looked at him. Let them. But it's my fault. No, if I hadn't, stop. Namjoon's voice was firm. You didn't create this. I found it, exactly. Suga looked toward Han, and now they're afraid you'll expose it. Han said nothing. Namjoon stepped closer. This isn't over. Han smiled faintly. No. He opened the conference room door. It has barely begun. The door closed behind him. For several seconds nobody moved. Then Jin exhaled. I hate people who say things like that. J-Hope looked at him. What? It has barely begun. Jin shook his head. That's exactly what villains say before the second act. Despite everything, Jungkook laughed. It was small, nervous, but real. Taehyung smiled too. Then Namjoon looked at the city outside the glass. We need to make our own statement. Suga nodded. And this time we tell the truth. Taehyung looked at him. Everything we can prove. Namjoon turned around. Not speculation, not rumors, evidence. He looked at Taehyung. You were right to refuse. Taehyung's eyes filled again. I was scared. You can be scared and still be right. Jimin reached for his hand. Taehyung squeezed it. Outside, the city was beginning to glow under the afternoon sun. News vans were already gathering near the building. Cameras waited beyond the gates. Reporters shouted questions as employees entered and left. The story had escaped the room. It had become public. It had become something bigger than any of them. Namjoon looked at the 6 members beside him. Whatever happens next, nobody speaks alone. They nodded. Taehyung looked down at his phone one final time. Another unknown message appeared. This time there was no threat, only a sentence. You finally understand what the trend was for. Taehyung stared at it. Then he deleted it without answering. He slipped the phone into his pocket and walked toward the others. For the first time since the nightmare began, he didn't feel like the center of the storm. He felt like one person inside a circle that refused to break. And when the 7 of them stepped into the elevator together, the doors closed slowly, hiding them from the cameras outside, while somewhere across the city, thousands of people waited for an explanation that would soon force the entire campaign into the light. Do not open that door. The warning came through Namjoon's phone less than 10 seconds before the elevator reached the ground floor, and the calmness of the voice note made it more frightening than a scream. Nobody moved. The elevator continued descending, numbers glowing above the doors while the 7 members stood shoulder to shoulder in silence. Taehyung stared at Namjoon's screen. Who sent that? Namjoon did not answer immediately. He replayed the voice note. The voice was distorted, low and almost mechanical, but beneath the distortion there was something unmistakably human about it. Do not open that door. If you leave through the lobby, they will be waiting. Jungkook looked toward the elevator doors. Who will be waiting? I don't know, Namjoon said. Then why are you listening to them? Suga asked. Namjoon looked up. Because they knew we were in this elevator. The elevator stopped at the ground floor. The doors remained closed. Outside came the muffled roar of voices, camera shutters, security radios, and people shouting questions. They're already here, Jimin whispered. Jin looked at the ceiling camera. And apparently someone knows exactly where we are. J-Hope stepped closer to Namjoon. What do we do? Namjoon looked at all of them. Nobody panics. Suga gave him a dry look. That advice is already too late. The doors opened. The lobby exploded with noise. Hundreds of camera flashes burst through the glass entrance. Reporters shouted names. Security guards pushed against a crowd that had gathered beyond the barriers, and microphones rose into the air like a forest of black sticks. RM, is BTS breaking up? Taehyung, did you cause the withdrawal? Did the campaign reject BTS? Are the reports about internal conflict true? Did you violate the contract? Why did BTS refuse the challenge? Taehyung instinctively stepped backward. Jungkook moved in front of him. Jimin placed a hand against Taehyung's shoulder. Namjoon raised one hand. Everyone stay together. A reporter pushed forward. RM, is it true Taehyung refused because he disagreed with the group? Taehyung's face tightened. Another shouted, did he put the entire campaign at risk? Then someone screamed, is BTS divided? The question hit the lobby like a spark. Namjoon stepped forward. We will release a statement when we have verified information. Until then, please don't spread assumptions. A reporter shouted, but your company says the group voluntarily withdrew. Namjoon stopped. His eyes narrowed. Our company said that. Yes. Another reporter raised a phone showing the statement. It says BTS chose to step away due to internal scheduling and creative differences. Suga laughed once. Creative differences. His voice carried through the lobby. That's a very creative way of saying nobody asked us. Cameras immediately swung toward him. Suga, are you saying the company lied? Suga stared directly into the nearest camera. I'm saying you should ask the people who wrote the statement. Security began moving them toward a private exit. Taehyung heard his name repeatedly. Some voices sounded angry, others sounded sympathetic. One person shouted, Taehyung, don't apologize. Another screamed, you're ruining everything. He felt his chest tighten. Then a hand grabbed his wrist. He turned sharply. A man stood among the reporters wearing a black cap and medical mask. His eyes were the only visible part of his face. He whispered, you should have listened. Taehyung froze. Before he could react, security pushed the man backward. Jungkook saw it. Who was that? Taehyung shook his head. I don't know. What did he say? Nothing. Jungkook stared at him. Taehyung. Taehyung looked away. Later, they were rushed through a service corridor and into a waiting vehicle. The doors slammed shut. The driver accelerated before everyone had even fastened their seat belts. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Jungkook turned toward Taehyung. What did he say? Taehyung kept looking out the window. He told me I should have listened. To whom? I don't know. Taehyung, I don't know. Jungkook fell silent. Namjoon looked at Taehyung through the rearview mirror. We'll deal with it. No, Taehyung whispered. That's the problem. Everyone looked at him. What? Jimin asked. Taehyung rubbed his palms against his jeans. Every time something happens, everyone says we'll deal with it, but what if we can't? Suga leaned forward. Then we find another way. What if there isn't one? There always is. You don't know that. Neither do you. Their eyes met. Taehyung's voice cracked. I'm tired. The car became quiet. I'm tired of people telling me that everything is fine when it clearly isn't. I'm tired of reading things about myself that aren't true. I'm tired of wondering who's watching us. I'm tired of wondering if every camera is recording something that will be used against us later. His breathing became uneven, and I'm terrified that the more we fight this, the worse it becomes for everyone. Jimin reached across and took his hand. Then be terrified with us. Taehyung looked at him. What? You don't have to stop being afraid. Jimin squeezed his hand. Just don't disappear inside it. Taehyung lowered his head. Namjoon watched them in the mirror and said quietly, we're going somewhere safe. Where? Jin asked. Namjoon hesitated. A place nobody from the company knows we're going. Suga's eyes narrowed. That doesn't exist. It does. Since when? Since last night. Everyone looked at him. You made a backup plan, J-Hope asked. I started making one after the first message. Suga stared at him for several seconds. You didn't tell us. Namjoon gave a tired smile. You all would have argued. Correct, Jin said, so I was right. You were secretive, Suga replied. There's a difference. Not when we're being followed. The driver suddenly slowed. A black SUV had appeared behind them. It stayed 3 car lengths away. Namjoon noticed. Don't turn around. Everyone immediately turned around. Namjoon sighed. I literally said don't turn around. Jin looked through the rear window. It has been following us for 6 minutes. Suga checked his phone. I can see it. Can we lose it? Namjoon asked the driver. I can try. The car turned left. The SUV followed. Another turn, still there. Taehyung's heart began pounding. Maybe it's security. Suga shook his head. Our security vehicles have different plates. How do you know? Because I pay attention. The driver accelerated. The SUV accelerated too. J-Hope gripped the seat. This is getting ridiculous. Hold on, the driver said. They entered a narrow side road. The SUV followed. Then the driver suddenly turned into an underground parking entrance. The lights disappeared. The car descended 2 levels. The SUV passed the entrance without noticing. Everyone exhaled at once. Jin leaned back. I would like to formally request that today be cancelled. Nobody laughed. The driver stopped in a dark corner. Namjoon looked at his phone. No signal. Perfect, Suga muttered. Namjoon opened a hidden compartment beneath the dashboard and removed a small black device. Taehyung stared. What's that? A signal jammer. Everyone looked at him. Namjoon raised both hands. Temporary. Suga stared at him. Since when do you carry those? Since I realized someone was tracking our phones. And you didn't think that was important enough to mention. I was trying to confirm it first. Suga shook his head. You are becoming increasingly annoying. Namjoon smiled faintly. Thank you. They waited underground for nearly 20 minutes. Then Namjoon led them through a service tunnel and into a private building several blocks away. The building looked abandoned from the outside. Inside, however, there was a small studio, a kitchen, several bedrooms, and enough equipment to survive for days. Taehyung looked around. Whose place is this? Mine, Namjoon said. You have a secret bunker, Jin asked. It's not a bunker. Suga looked at the reinforced door. It's absolutely a bunker. They entered. Namjoon locked the door. Then he removed his shoes and sat on the floor. Okay, he looked at everyone. Now we talk. The room felt different from the company office. No glass walls, no executives, no cameras that they knew of, no assistants waiting outside. Just 7 exhausted men sitting in a circle. Namjoon placed his phone in the middle. First, we need to establish what we know. Suga nodded. We know the campaign collects behavioral data. We know the leaked footage contains psychological categories. We know Han Seojin knows about the system. We know the company released a statement without our approval. We know someone is monitoring us, Jimin added, and we know someone has been sending us threats. Namjoon nodded. What we don't know is who. Or why, J-Hope said. We know why, Suga replied, because we're refusing. Taehyung looked at him. But why me? Nobody answered. That question had been hanging over them since yesterday. Why had Taehyung found the file? Why had he been targeted first? Why had the system labeled him a resistance trigger? Why had the anonymous messages started immediately after he refused? Namjoon finally said, maybe because you noticed something nobody else did. That's not enough. Maybe it is. Taehyung shook his head. No, there is something else. Suga looked at him. What? Taehyung hesitated. I remembered something. Everyone waited. 2 years ago, during one of our overseas schedules, I was asked to sign a research consent form. Jimin frowned. What research? I don't know. They said it was for audience psychology. Suga sat forward. Did you sign? Yes. Why? Because the staff told me everyone had signed. Suga's face darkened. Who gave it to you? I don't remember. Try. Taehyung closed his eyes. He searched his memory, a hotel room, a conference table, someone in a gray suit, a folder, a pen, a woman. Name, I don't know. What did she look like? Short hair, maybe late 30s. She wore a silver watch. Suga exchanged a look with Namjoon. Why? Taehyung asked. Suga opened his laptop. Because Han Seojin isn't the only person connected to this project. He searched a database. There was an ethics consultant listed on an older version of the campaign's corporate filings. The name appeared. Dr. Seo Myra. Taehyung's face changed. That's her. Everyone went still. You're sure? Namjoon asked. Taehyung nodded slowly. That's her. Suga stared at the screen. She's not listed anymore. Why? J-Hope asked. Her contract ended 18 months ago. Then why would she give me the form 2 years ago? Suga didn't answer. Namjoon stood. Find her. Suga searched. No current corporate address. Personal. Nothing public. Professional. Her academic profile disappeared 6 months ago. Jimin frowned. Disappeared, not deleted, removed. By whom? I don't know. Namjoon walked to the window. We're missing a piece. Taehyung stared at the laptop. Maybe she knows what the campaign really is. Suga nodded. Then we find her. Before anyone could respond, the lights went out. The room plunged into darkness. J-Hope swore. Jungkook stood immediately. Nobody move. A faint electronic click sounded from the hallway, then another. Taehyung felt Jimin's hand grab his sleeve. Namjoon whispered, "Stay together." The emergency lights flickered on. Red light washed over the room. The reinforced door at the entrance was still locked, but the monitor beside it had turned on by itself. A single line of text appeared, "Stop looking for her." Nobody spoke. Then another line appeared, "She cannot help you." Suga walked toward the monitor. "Who are you?" The screen changed. "You already know." "No," Suga said. "We don't." The text appeared again. "You know her name." Taehyung's stomach tight. "Dr. Seo." The monitor flickered. "Yes." Namjoon stepped closer. "Where is she?" The screen went black. Then a location appeared, a warehouse address on the outskirts of the city. Jimin looked at Namjoon. "This could be a trap." "Obviously," Suga said. "Then we're not going." Taehyung surprised everyone by speaking. "I'm going." Namjoon turned. "No." "Why?" "Because that's exactly what they want." "Maybe." Taehyung. "Namjoon, listen." He stepped closer. "If she's alive and she knows what this system is, she may be the only person who can prove what we're saying." Namjoon shook his head. "We can find another way." "Can we?" Taehyung asked quietly. "How many more days before the public believes we're fighting? How many more days before they destroy the evidence? How many more days before someone gets hurt?" Nobody answered. Taehyung looked at all six of them. "I'm not asking you to trust the location." His voice trembled. "I'm asking you to trust me." Jungkook stepped forward. "Then I'm coming." Jimin immediately said, "Me too." J-Hope sighed. "Apparently we're doing this." Jin grabbed his coat. "I hate this plan already." Suga looked at Namjoon. "Your decision." Namjoon stared at the location for a long time, then he picked up his jacket. "We go together." They left the building through a rear entrance. The city had become darker as evening approached. Rain began falling again, thin at first, then harder. Their vehicles split into two groups to avoid attention. Namjoon drove the first car with Taehyung, Suga, and Jungkook. Jimin, Jin, and J-Hope followed separately. Nobody talked much. The address led them beyond the main city, past warehouses and empty industrial lots. The rain hammered the windshield. Taehyung stared at the GPS. "We're close." Namjoon slowed. "There." A massive abandoned warehouse appeared through the rain. No lights. No security. No vehicles. "Too quiet," Jungkook whispered. Suga opened his door. "Stay here." Hyung stopped him. "No, this isn't a movie." "I know." "Then act like it." Namjoon raised a hand. "Nobody goes alone." They approached the warehouse together. The metal door was slightly open. Inside, darkness swallowed them. A faint smell of dust and oil hung in the air. Water dripped from the ceiling. Their footsteps echoed. "Dr. Seo," Namjoon called. No answer. They moved deeper. Then a light flickered on. A projector illuminated the far wall. Images appeared. BTS performances. Interviews. Rehearsals. Private behind-the-scenes footage. Taehyung stopped breathing. "How did they get all of this?" Jimin whispered from behind them. Another video played, Taehyung laughing backstage. Another. Jungkook falling asleep during a flight. Another. Jimin crying after a performance. Another. Namjoon arguing with a staff member. Another. Suga alone in a studio at 3 in the morning. Another. Jin comforting J-Hope. Another. The footage kept coming. Hundreds of moments. Thousands. Years compressed into minutes. Taehyung's eyes filled with tears. They watched everything. Suga's face had gone completely still. "No," he stared at the screen. "They didn't just watch." Namjoon looked at him. "What?" Suga pointed. "Look at the timestamps." The footage was not organized chronologically. It was organized by emotional response. Fear, exhaustion, trust, anger, relief, isolation, attachment. Taehyung whispered, "They turned our lives into categories." A voice came from the darkness. "Not your lives." Everyone spun around. A woman stepped into the light, short hair, gray coat, silver watch. Taehyung recognized her immediately. Dr. Seo. She looked older than he remembered, tired, pale. Her eyes moved across the 7 members. "You shouldn't have come." Namjoon stepped forward. "You told us to stop looking." "I didn't." "Then who did?" She looked at the projector. "The people who are afraid you'll find the archive." Suga's voice was cold. "What archive?" Dr. Seo looked directly at Taehyung. "The original one." Taehyung's breath caught. "What does that mean?" The system didn't begin with your campaign. Then what did it begin with? She hesitated. A prototype. For what? Predicting collective behavior. J-Hope shook his head. That's still too vague. Dr. Seo looked at him. Have you ever wondered why certain trends spread faster after particular artists participate? Nobody answered. Have you ever wondered why some controversies seem to appear simultaneously across different countries? Why certain narratives rise while others disappear? Why audiences suddenly change their opinion about something they supported for years? Jin's expression hardened. You're saying the system controls people. No, she shook her head. It predicts which pressure will work. Taehyung stared at her. And the trend, a test, for us, for everyone. Namjoon stepped closer. Why did you give Taehyung that form 2 years ago? Dr. Seo's eyes softened. Because I was trying to protect him. From what? From becoming the first person to notice. Taehyung felt his stomach drop. First person, she nodded. There were others. Suga asked, what happened to them? Dr. Seo looked away. They changed their minds, because they were persuaded, because they were pressured. By whom? She didn't answer. Then the warehouse doors slammed shut. Everyone turned. Metal locks engaged one after another. Dr. Seo's face went white. They're here. Namjoon immediately moved the members behind him. Who? The people I ran from. A loudspeaker crackled overhead. A man's voice filled the warehouse. Dr. Seo, you should have stayed hidden. Taehyung recognized the voice, Han Seojun, and you should have stopped searching, Han continued. You were given every opportunity. Namjoon shouted, come out. Han laughed softly through the speakers. You still think this is a negotiation? Suga shouted back, then what is it? A demonstration. The projector changed. 7 profiles appeared on the wall. Each member's name was displayed beside a series of predictions. Namjoon. Leadership pressure 92%, Suga. Skepticism threshold 87%, J-Hope. Group stability response 94%, Jimin. Emotional reconciliation response 96%, Jin. Humor deflection tendency 89%, Jungkook. Protective loyalty response 98%, Taehyung. Defiance persistence 97%. Taehyung stared at the number. 97. Han's voice continued. You see, Taehyung, your refusal was not unexpected. Taehyung looked up. Then why are you afraid? Silence. Han answered, because you were supposed to stop at refusal. Taehyung's heart pounded. What? The model predicted you'd refuse the campaign. Han's voice became quieter. It predicted you would become uncomfortable, confront the contract, and eventually back down after pressure from your group. Taehyung looked at the others. But you didn't, Han said. You convinced them to resist with you. Namjoon stepped forward, because the model was wrong. Yes, Han sounded almost fascinated, and that is precisely why you became dangerous. Taehyung felt tears gather in his eyes, so this entire thing was a test, partially. You wanted to see whether we would obey. We wanted to see whether collective loyalty could override individual resistance. Jimin shouted, we're not experiments. Everyone is an experiment when data is valuable enough. Suga stepped forward. You sound proud. Han paused. I'm afraid. That admission silenced them. Of what? Namjoon asked. Han's voice lowered. Of what happens if the model fails at scale? Dr. Seo whispered. That's what I tried to tell them. Han ignored her. You think this is about BTS. It isn't. You're one variable in a system that already influences millions. Namjoon stared at the projector. Then why reveal yourself? Because you forced my hand. No, you forced ours. Han laughed bitterly. You still don't understand. Then explain. The warehouse doors suddenly unlocked. Everyone turned. Han's voice came one final time. Ask Dr. Seo what happened the first time the model failed. Then the speakers went silent. Dr. Seo closed her eyes. Taehyung looked at her. What happened? She didn't answer. Please. Her face crumpled. Someone died. The words seemed to drain the air from the room. Jimin stepped closer. Who? Dr. Seo looked at Taehyung. An artist. Taehyung froze. Who? She swallowed. Someone who refused. The projector shut down. Darkness returned. And for several seconds nobody spoke. Rain hammered the warehouse roof. Taehyung stood in the darkness, feeling the weight of those words settle inside him. The global trend had never been just a dance. The campaign had never been about entertainment. And now they knew the most terrifying part was not that someone had been studying them. It was that someone had built an entire system around predicting what people would do when they were afraid. Namjoon reached for Taehyung's shoulder. Taehyung didn't pull away. "We're leaving," Namjoon said. "All of us." Taehyung nodded, but before they moved, Dr. Seo whispered, "There is one more thing you need to know." Everyone turned toward her. She looked at Taehyung. "The person who died wasn't the first failure." She took a trembling breath. "And you aren't the first artist they tried to use." Taehyung's eyes widened. "Then who was?" Dr. Seo looked toward the dark projector screen. "Someone you already know." No one spoke. For once, even Suga had no immediate answer. Namjoon simply moved closer to the group, his hand resting firmly against Taehyung's shoulder as they stood together in the dim warehouse. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And for the first time, Taehyung understood that refusing the trend had not started the danger. It had only revealed how close the danger had been all along. "Someone we already know," Jungkook repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean?" Dr. Seo did not answer. She stood beneath the dead projector, her face illuminated only by the emergency lights, and for several seconds she looked less like a scientist and more like someone who had spent years carrying a secret that had become too heavy to hold. Taehyung stepped closer. "You said the person was someone we know." Dr. Seo's eyes moved toward him. "Said you already know the person. Then say the name." "I can't," Suga's patience snapped. "You dragged us into an abandoned warehouse, showed us years of private footage, told us someone died, and now you're saying you can't tell us who. Because if I say the name here, they'll know I told you." "They already know we're here," Suga fired back. "No," Dr. Seo whispered. "They know you're here, they don't know what I was going to tell you." Namjoon stepped between them. "Everyone calm down." Suga turned sharply. "No, Namjoon, I'm done being calm." His eyes burned with anger. "For 2 days we've been told to stay calm while people monitor us, manipulate public statements, threaten us, and apparently use years of our lives as experimental data. We are way past calm." Namjoon didn't argue. "Then be angry, but don't let anger decide what we do next." "What would you prefer?" Suga demanded. "That we politely ask her for another vague clue." Dr. Seo looked at him. "You have every right to be angry. I don't need permission." "I know," her voice trembled, "but if you want the truth, you have to understand why it was hidden." Taehyung stared at her. "Tell us." Dr. Seo inhaled slowly. "The first major failure happened before the campaign existed. The system was originally designed for something much smaller. It was supposed to predict how audiences would react to changes in entertainment narratives." Jin frowned. "Meaning? If an artist changed their public behavior, how would fans respond? If a group altered its image, how much resistance would there be? If a controversy appeared, how quickly would support decline? If an emotional message was released at the right moment, how many people would change their opinion?" J-Hope shook his head. "That sounds like manipulation." "It became manipulation." "What happened?" Jimin asked. Dr. Seo looked down. "The researchers discovered something unexpected. They could predict individual behavior surprisingly well, but they couldn't reliably predict collective decisions." Namjoon understood immediately. "Because people influence one another." "Exactly. One person's fear can become another person's courage. One person's anger can become another person's restraint. One person can change the entire group." Her gaze settled on Taehyung. "That is why you became important." Taehyung felt a chill move down his spine. "Because I refused." "Because you refused before anyone else had decided what to do." Suga crossed his arms. "And the dead artist," Dr. Seo closed her eyes. "His name was Min Yeho." Jin frowned. "I don't recognize that name." "You wouldn't," she opened her eyes. "He was a singer from a small independent label, talented, popular enough to attract attention but not famous enough to have protection." Taehyung asked, "What happened to him?" "He was approached by the project team after refusing a promotional partnership." "The same kind of partnership, the same structure," she hesitated. "He refused because the contract included rights to behavioral analysis." Suga's expression changed. "So he saw it too?" "Yes." "And then?" "They pressured him." "How?" Dr. Seo's voice became quieter. "First, they leaked rumors. Then they manufactured disagreements between him and his label. They encouraged journalists to frame him as unstable and difficult. They contacted sponsors. They convinced people around him that he was becoming a liability." Taehyung's face tightened. "They destroyed his reputation." "They tried," Jimin asked. "He fought back." Dr. Seo looked toward the dark projector. He refused to apologize. Namjoon whispered, like Taehyung. Dr. Seo nodded. That's when the model failed. Jungkook frowned. How? The model predicted that isolation would eventually make him surrender. Instead, he became more determined. And then, Dr. Seo swallowed. He disappeared. Silence filled the warehouse. Disappeared, Jin asked. Officially, he withdrew from the industry because of personal problems. His label released a statement. His family asked for privacy. Suga's voice hardened. And unofficially, he was found dead 3 weeks later. J-Hope covered his mouth. What? They said it was suicide. Taehyung stared at her. You don't believe that. I know it wasn't. How? Because he sent me evidence the night before he died. Dr. Seo reached into her coat and removed a small encrypted drive. He knew what they were doing. He knew they were watching him. He copied the original research files and sent them to me. Namjoon looked at the drive. Why didn't you release them? Her eyes filled with tears. I tried. And they threatened my family. Nobody spoke. They showed me photographs of my parents. Younger brother, they knew where they lived. They knew where my nephew went to school. Suga's jaw tight. So you stayed quiet. Yes, for years, yes. Suga stepped toward her. And how many people suffered because you stayed quiet? Dr. Seo didn't defend herself. I don't know. That's the answer. It's the truth. Truth isn't enough. I know. Suga's voice shook. You could have told someone. I did. Who? People who disappeared from the project. And what happened to them? Some left. Some were bought. Some were threatened. One was arrested after evidence was planted in his office. Suga stared at her. You expect us to believe this? No, she held up the drive. That's why I kept the evidence. Namjoon took a step forward. Why give it to us now? Because the system changed. How? It stopped predicting entertainment behavior. Her eyes moved toward Taehyung. It began predicting resistance. Taehyung's mouth went dry. Resistance to what? Anything. That's impossible. It started with campaigns, then advertising, then political messaging, then social movements. They discovered that if they could predict who would resist a narrative, they could identify the people most likely to influence others. Jimin whispered, influencers, not social media influencers. Dr. Seo shook her head. Human influencers, people whose decisions cause other people to reconsider theirs. Namjoon looked at Taehyung. That's what the profile meant. Yes. Resistance trigger. Yes. And the others, Dr. Seo nodded. Every member of BTS has a different influence pattern. Jin stared at the floor. So they know how we react. They think they do. Suga immediately looked up. Think, that's the flaw. Dr. Seo's voice became firmer. The system is powerful, but it has one weakness. Namjoon leaned closer. What's that? It assumes people remain consistent. Taehyung understood, but we don't. Exactly, she looked at him. You refused when the model predicted compliance. Then the others followed when the model predicted separation. Jungkook's eyes narrowed. So we're breaking their predictions. Yes, that's why they're afraid. Yes. Namjoon looked at the drive, and that's why they want us to participate. They want the data from your reaction. What happens if we don't give it to them? Dr. Seo looked at him. They'll try to create a reaction anyway. The words landed heavily. Suga's eyes narrowed, meaning, if they can't observe your natural response, they'll manufacture circumstances that force you to respond. Taehyung's heart began pounding. The leaked footage. One example, the false statement. Another, the threats. Dr. Seo nodded. Pressure. The rumors about us fighting. Pressure. Jimin suddenly looked sick. Then everything happening right now is part of the experiment. Dr. Seo didn't answer. She didn't have to. Jin stood abruptly. This is insane. He paced across the warehouse. They're intentionally creating conflict around us to measure how we react. Yes, they are using our friendship as data. Yes, our fear. Yes, our arguments. Yes, Jin stopped. Our pain. Dr. Seo's eyes dropped. Yes, the word broke something in the room. J-Hope turned away. Jungkook clenched both fists. Suga looked ready to smash the projector. Namjoon remained still. Taehyung watched him. Namjoon, RM didn't answer. Taehyung, Namjoon finally spoke. How long? What? How long have they been collecting data on BTS? Dr. Seo hesitated. Longer than you think. Namjoon's expression hardened. How long? Since before your first major global expansion. Everyone went silent. Taehyung felt as though the floor had shifted. Before we became this big. Yes, Jimin's voice cracked. You mean they were watching us from the beginning? Not continuously, but whenever your influence became significant, the system collected more. Jungkook stared at her. Then they know everything. No, what don't they know? What you will choose when you stop performing for them. Taehyung looked at the floor. That sentence stayed with him: when you stop performing for them. He suddenly remembered countless interviews, countless cameras. Questions about happiness, friendship, success, pressure, every answer carefully chosen, every smile practiced, every emotional moment captured. He had always thought the hardest part of fame was being watched. Now he realized the more terrifying possibility was being interpreted. "I want to see the files," Taehyung said. Namjoon looked at him. "Not here." "Why?" "Because we don't know whether this place is compromised." Dr. Seo immediately nodded. "He's right." Suga looked at her. "Then where?" "There's a safe room." "You have a safe room?" "I built it after Yeho died." "Where?" "Underground." "How far?" 20 minutes. Namjoon looked at the others. "We move now." They followed Dr. Seo through the warehouse. She opened a concealed door behind a stack of wooden crates. A narrow stairway descended into darkness. The air became colder as they went down. Taehyung followed Jungkook, one hand brushing the wall. "Does anyone else think this is completely insane?" Jin whispered. "Yes," Jungkook replied. "Good," Jin nodded. "I just wanted confirmation." At the bottom was a steel door. Dr. Seo entered a code. The lock opened. Inside was a small room lined with computers, hard drives, paper files, and old photographs. A generator hummed in the corner. Dr. Seo shut the door behind them. "This room has no external network connection." Suga looked around. "You're sure?" "Yes." "Then we can finally talk." Dr. Seo nodded. Namjoon sat at the central terminal. "Show us everything." She activated the system. Folder after folder appeared. Project Atlas, Project Echo, Project Mirror, Project Pulse, Project Horizon, each contained thousands of files. Taehyung stared at the names. "What are these?" "Different versions of the model." "Which one is the campaign?" "Horizon." Suga clicked it. The screen filled with charts. "This is enormous." "It grew over time." Jimin stared at a list of countries. "It's global." "Yes." "How many people are in the database?" Dr. Seo didn't answer. "How many?" "Hundreds of millions." Nobody spoke. Jin whispered, "That's impossible. Not if the data is collected indirectly." "From where?" "Streaming platforms, social networks, search behavior, advertising interactions, public performances, interviews, live streams, purchases, reactions." Taehyung stared at the screen. "And us? You are one of the most valuable datasets." "Why?" "Because your audience is unusually diverse and emotionally engaged." Namjoon leaned closer. "So they can test messages through us." "Exactly. Without telling us." "Exactly." Suga slammed his hand against the desk. "This isn't a music campaign." "No, it's a behavioral laboratory." "Yes." J-Hope looked at Dr. Seo. "Who owns it?" "Officially, no one. Unofficially, several corporations, investment groups, research institutes, private contractors." Namjoon stared at the screen. "And Han Seojun? He's one of the project coordinators." "Who is above him?" Dr. Seo looked at him. "You don't want that answer." "Try me," she hesitated. "People you have met." Taehyung looked up. "People in the music industry, some. Government, some. Companies, many." Suga laughed bitterly. "So everyone is involved." "Not everyone." "Enough." Dr. Seo opened another folder. "There's one more thing." A document appeared. It was labeled Behavioral Deviation Event, BTS. The date was 2 years earlier. Taehyung stared at it. "That's the day I signed the consent form." Dr. Seo nodded. "Yes." The file contained detailed notes, Taehyung's emotional state, his questions, his hesitation, his refusal to answer one question, his interactions with the other members afterward. Taehyung's hands began shaking. "They recorded all of this." "Yes." "How?" "The room was monitored." "You were there?" "Yes." "You watched me?" Dr. Seo closed her eyes. "Yes." Taehyung stood. "You watched me sign it?" "Yes." "And you knew what it meant?" "Yes." His voice broke. "Then why didn't you stop me?" Dr. Seo looked at him. "Because I was afraid." Taehyung stared at her. "You keep saying that." "Because it's true. You were afraid, so you let me sign away my privacy. I thought I could undo it later. But you didn't." "No, why?" "Because after you signed, the project marked you as a high-value subject." Taehyung went completely still. "Subject?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because you asked questions." Suga's eyes narrowed. "He was marked because he questioned the form." "Yes." Taehyung looked at the screen. His name was highlighted in red. "What does high value mean, doctor?" Seo hesitated. It means the system predicted you would eventually challenge the campaign. Taehyung's eyes widened. 2 years ago, yes. They predicted I would refuse. Not exactly. Then what? They predicted you would be the first member to publicly resist a coordinated influence initiative. Nobody spoke. Taehyung felt his throat tight. So this was waiting for me. Yes. For 2 years, yes. And you knew. Dr. Seo looked down. Yes. Taehyung stepped backward. I need air. Jungkook followed immediately. I'll go with you. Taehyung shook his head. No. Hyung. Just for a minute. Jungkook stopped. Taehyung walked toward the far side of the room. He pressed both hands against the wall and lowered his head. His breathing became shallow. 2 years. The idea was unbearable. 2 years of thinking his instincts belonged to him. 2 years of believing his decisions came from ordinary doubts and ordinary intuition. What if some of those moments had been watched? What if his hesitation had been measured before he even understood it? He heard footsteps behind him. Namjoon stopped several feet away. Do you want me to leave? Taehyung didn't answer. I'll stay if you want. I don't know what I want. Namjoon nodded. That's okay. Taehyung's eyes filled. I hate this. I know. I hate that every memory suddenly feels contaminated. Namjoon didn't speak. I keep thinking about that hotel room, the form, the pen, the woman. His voice shook. I thought I was just signing paperwork. You were. No, he turned around. I was signing something that people were waiting for me to sign. Namjoon looked at him. You were manipulated. Does that make me stupid? No. Then what does it make me? Human. Taehyung laughed bitterly. That's not enough. Maybe it is. Not for me. Namjoon moved closer. Listen to me. Taehyung looked up. They've spent years trying to predict you, but they still got one thing wrong. What? They think your resistance belongs to a pattern. Namjoon placed a hand against his shoulder. It doesn't. Taehyung's tears finally fell. How do you know? Because I watched you change. Taehyung wiped his face. What? When we were younger, you used to say yes because you didn't want to disappoint people. Taehyung looked away. I remember. Then you learned to say no when you were uncomfortable. Sometimes. More often than you think. Namjoon smiled faintly. And that's something no model can fully predict. Taehyung's voice was barely audible. What if they know us better than we know ourselves? Namjoon shook his head. They know our patterns. He tapped Taehyung's chest gently. They don't know our choices. The words steadied him. Then a loud alarm sounded from the control room. Both turned. Suga shouted everyone back. They rushed toward the computers. A red warning flashed across the main screen. External access DETCTD. J-Hope looked at Dr. Seo. You said there was no network. There isn't. Then how are they accessing it? Dr. Seo's face went white. Through the archive. What does that mean? The files are linked to a remote mirror. Suga slammed his hands onto the keyboard. Can you disconnect it? Not without destroying the archive. Namjoon stepped closer. How long? 3 minutes. Then copy everything. There are terabytes. Copy the most important files. Which ones? Everything proving the manipulation. Suga was already working. I'm creating a compressed archive. Jimin looked at the screen. They're deleting files. One folder disappeared, then another. They're inside. Suga typed faster. They're trying to wipe it. Namjoon looked at Dr. Seo. Can you stop them? Maybe. Do it. She sat beside Suga. Their fingers moved across the keyboard. The room filled with clicking keys and alarm tones. Taehyung stood behind them, watching years of evidence vanish. They're deleting Yeho's files. Dr. Seo froze. No, can you save them? I'm trying. Hurry, Suga shouted. I need another drive. Jungkook handed him one. Here, not enough. Jin grabbed another. Use mine. J-Hope pulled out his own. Take this. Jimin followed. Mine too. Namjoon smiled faintly. 7 drives. Suga looked at them. You realize this is absurd. Jin replied, we've had stranger schedules. Suga laughed despite himself. Fair. The transfer began. 12%. 1927. Then the lights flickered. They're attacking the power. Dr. Seo stood. The generator won't hold. How long? 5 minutes. Suga looked at the screen. Transfer needs 6. Then make it faster. I'm doing my best. 41%, 48, 53. The room shook as something struck the outer door. Jungkook immediately moved toward it. They're here. Namjoon looked at everyone. Stay behind me. Another impact. The steel door bent slightly. Taehyung's heart raced. Who are they? Nobody knew. Another strike. The lock rattled. 3 minutes, Dr. Seo whispered. Suga didn't look up. 60%. The door shook again. J-Hope grabbed a metal bar from the floor. Jin stood beside him. This is ridiculous. I know. We're singers. I know. We shouldn't be fighting people in underground bunkers. I know. I'm just making sure we're all aware. Jungkook almost laughed. Then the door exploded inward. 2 masked men entered. Namjoon shouted back. Jungkook moved first, blocking the doorway while Suga continued transferring files. The men tried to push through. J-Hope and Jin helped hold them back. It was chaotic, loud, and terrifying. Nobody knew who the attackers were. Taehyung saw one of them reach toward the computer. He grabbed the man's arm. Don't touch it. The man shoved him hard. Taehyung stumbled backward. Jungkook caught him. Hyung, I'm okay. Jungkook turned furious. He pushed the attacker away. Don't touch him. The attacker raised his fist. Namjoon stepped between them. Enough, the attacker hesitated. That single hesitation gave Suga time. 87%, Dr. Seo shouted. Keep them away. Taehyung grabbed a chair and pushed it toward the doorway. Jimin pulled Dr. Seo away from the computer. Stay down. I can't. You're no use dead. Neither are you. I'm not planning to die. The transfer reached 94%. One attacker broke through. He rushed toward the computer. Taehyung moved without thinking. He threw himself between the man and the terminal. The man stopped. Their eyes met through the mask. Taehyung saw something familiar, not the face. The eyes, calm, controlled, almost sad. The attacker whispered, "You were never supposed to get this far." Taehyung froze. "Who are you?" The man didn't answer. He stepped backward as the transfer reached 100%. Suga shouted, "Done." The lights went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Then emergency lights returned. The attackers were gone. The steel door hung open. Rain could be heard somewhere above. Everyone stood frozen. Suga looked at the drives. "We have it, Doctor." Seo exhaled. "Then we leave." Namjoon looked at Taehyung. "Are you hurt?" "No." Jungkook immediately checked him anyway. "Are you sure?" "Yes." Jungkook looked relieved. "Good." Suga approached with the drives. "We have enough evidence to destroy them." Namjoon shook his head. "Not yet." "Why?" "Because evidence only matters if people believe it." Suga stared at him. "Then we'll make them believe it." Dr. Seo suddenly spoke. "You can't release everything." Everyone looked at her. "Why?" "Because some files contain information about ordinary people who never consented to being in the system." Namjoon nodded. "Then we protect them." "How?" "We release proof without exposing innocent people." Suga looked at him. "That's going to take time." "Then we take time." Taehyung watched Namjoon. Even now, with everything collapsing around them, he was thinking about people who weren't even in the room. That was the moment Taehyung understood why everyone followed him. Not because he always had the answer, because when things became unbearable, he still tried to make the right decision. They left the underground room through the warehouse entrance. The rain had become heavy. The city lights shimmered on wet asphalt. Dr. Seo walked beside Taehyung. "You know what they will do next?" "Yes. They'll try to make you look unstable." "I know. They'll say you misunderstood the contract." "I know. They'll say I fabricated everything." "I know." She looked at him. "Then why aren't you afraid?" Taehyung smiled sadly. "I am. You don't look like it. That's because I've learned something." "What?" He looked at the others walking ahead. "Fear doesn't mean stop." Dr. Seo's eyes filled with tears. "Yeho used to say that." Taehyung looked at her. "Then maybe he was right." She nodded. They reached the cars. Before getting inside, Namjoon looked at everyone. "Tonight, nobody posts anything. Nobody responds to reporters. Nobody speaks to anyone outside our trusted team." Jin raised his hand. "What about food?" Namjoon sighed. "Yes, you can order food." "Thank you." Suga rolled his eyes. "Priorities." Jin smiled faintly. "We need strength." They got into the cars, but before Taehyung closed his door, his phone vibrated. Unknown number. He hesitated, then opened it. There was a photograph, 7 of them standing in the warehouse, taken from outside, taken minutes earlier. Underneath was one sentence. "You think you escaped." Taehyung's blood ran cold. Another message appeared immediately. "Look closer at the person who saved you." Taehyung stared at the words. He looked up. Everyone was already inside the cars. Dr. Seo stood beside Namjoon. She looked exhausted, vulnerable, honest. Taehyung looked back at the message. Then he noticed something in the photograph. The image had been taken from behind them. In the reflection of a warehouse window, a figure was visible. The same black cap, the same mask, the same silver watch, but the figure wasn't one of the attackers. It was standing farther away, watching Dr. Seo. Taehyung zoomed in, his heart stopped. The silver watch was unmistakable. He had seen it before, 2 years earlier in the hotel room. The woman who had handed him the consent form had worn a silver watch. Dr. Seo noticed his expression. "What is it?" Taehyung slowly raised the phone. "You told me you were trying to protect me." Dr. Seo looked at the photograph. Her face changed completely. "Where did you get that? Who is she?" Dr. Seo stared at the screen. "I don't know." Taehyung's voice became sharper. "You know the watch." "No, you recognized it." "Taehyung, who is she?" Dr. Seo looked toward the dark warehouse. For the first time since they met, genuine terror appeared in her eyes. "We have to leave." "Who is she?" Now, Namjoon approached. "What's happening?" Dr. Seo whispered. "The woman who gave you the consent form wasn't me." Taehyung froze. "Then who was she?" Dr. Seo looked at the photograph again. Her lips trembled. "She was the person who recruited me." Namjoon's expression hardened. "Name?" Dr. Seo closed her eyes. "Kang Hyejin." Suga repeated the name under his breath. "Kang Hyejin." Dr. Seo nodded. "She was the architect of the original model." Taehyung stared at the photograph. "And she's been watching me for 2 years." "Yes." "Why?" Dr. Seo looked at him. "Because she believed you would eventually become the person who could break it." Taehyung felt the rain against his face. "Break what?" Dr. Seo answered softly. "The model that predicts everyone." Namjoon looked toward the road. "Get in the cars." They moved quickly. Taehyung climbed inside, still staring at the photograph. The storm outside blurred the city into streaks of light. He thought about the trend, the contract, the leaked footage, the profiles, the threats, the dead artist, the hidden archive. The woman with the silver watch. Suddenly all of it felt like pieces of one enormous machine. But there was one thing the machine had not calculated. 7 people who refused to let one another stand alone. Taehyung looked across the car at Namjoon. "What if she wants us to find her?" Namjoon considered the question. "Then we make sure she doesn't get to decide what happens next." Suga looked up from the drives. "And if she knows something we don't," Namjoon answered, "then we listen. And if she's lying, then we verify." Taehyung looked out the window. "And if she's telling the truth," Namjoon met his eyes through the mirror, "then we finish what we started." The cars disappeared into the rain. Behind them, the warehouse stood empty and silent. Somewhere inside, a forgotten projector flickered once before shutting down completely. And on its final frame, frozen for less than a second, was an image of Taehyung from 2 years earlier, sitting in a hotel room with a pen in his hand, looking directly toward a camera he had never known was there. The screen went black. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. But inside the moving car, Taehyung no longer looked afraid of the camera. He looked determined to find who had been holding it. The first thing Taehyung heard when they returned to the safe house was the sound of glass breaking. Everyone stopped. Namjoon raised one hand, signaling silence, while Suga slowly reached for the emergency flashlight beneath the driver's seat. Rain continued hammering the roof of the building, but beneath it came another sound, faint and deliberate, like someone dragging a metal object across the floor upstairs. Yoongi whispered, "Someone's inside." Jimin's hand immediately found Taehyung's sleeve. "Stay behind us." Taehyung shook his head. "No, Taehyung, I'm not hiding anymore." Suga looked at him sharply. "This isn't about bravery, I know. Then don't make it about pride. I'm not." Taehyung looked toward the dark staircase. "I'm tired of being the person everyone protects while everyone else takes the risk." Namjoon studied him for a second, then nodded. "Fine, but you stay between us." Jin whispered, "That is the least comforting compromise I've ever heard." Nobody laughed. Front door remained locked. The windows were intact, yet the noise upstairs continued. One slow scrape, then silence, another scrape, then silence. Namjoon motioned for everyone to move. They entered the building together. The smell of wet concrete and old wood filled the hallway. Their shoes left dark footprints across the floor. J-Hope whispered, "Could be an animal." Suga shook his head. "Animals don't open drawers." Everyone looked at him. "How do you know?" Jin whispered. "Because I saw the drawer move." "You could have mentioned that earlier. I wanted to see if it happened again." "You are unbelievably calm." "I'm not calm." Suga's voice was quiet. "I'm furious." They reached the staircase. The lights upstairs were off. Namjoon climbed first. Jungkook followed, then Taehyung, Jimin, Suga, J-Hope, and Jin. Halfway up, a shadow moved across the wall. Jungkook froze. Someone's there. The shadow disappeared. Namjoon whispered, "Stay together." They reached the upper floor. The hallway looked exactly as they had left it. Then Taehyung noticed something on the floor, a photograph. He crouched and picked it up. It showed BTS standing outside the building earlier that evening, taken from across the street. Taehyung's fingers tightened around the edges. They've been watching this place too. Namjoon took the photograph. On the back was a handwritten message. "You brought her here." Dr. Seo saw it and went pale. "No." "What?" Namjoon asked. She shook her head. "We need to leave." Suga's expression hardened. "Again? Now? Why?" Dr. Seo pointed toward the photograph. "Because that means they know where the archive is. They already know we have it." "No," her voice trembled. "They know where the original copy is." Namjoon stared at her. "You mean there's another archive?" "Yes." "Where?" "The building beneath the old research center," Suga swore. "Of course there is." Jimin looked at Dr. Seo. "What is stored there?" "The original behavioral models. And the identity keys." Taehyung frowned. "What are those?" Dr. Seo looked at him. "The keys that connect anonymous data to real people." The room went silent. Namjoon immediately understood. If they have the identity keys, they can prove who belongs to every profile. Yes. Then they can expose millions of people. Yes. Or manipulate them. Yes. Suga closed his eyes. "Then we don't just have evidence." He looked at Namjoon. "We have a weapon." Dr. Seo shook her head. "No, you have a responsibility." Suga opened his eyes. "Don't lecture me. I'm not. It sounds like you are. I'm telling you what happens if you treat the archive like leverage." Suga stepped closer. "After everything you've told us, you're worried about what we might do." "I'm worried because I know what anger does to people. And you know what silence does." Dr. Seo lowered her eyes. "Yes." "Then don't ask us to be quiet." "I'm not." Namjoon stepped between them. "Enough. We need a plan." Suddenly the lights came on. Everyone spun around. A television at the end of the hallway flickered to life. The screen showed Han Seojin sitting in a dark room. He looked directly into the camera. "You made it home." Nobody moved. Han smiled. "Or at least you thought you did." Namjoon stepped forward. "Where are you? Does it matter?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I'm going to find you." Han laughed softly. "You still think this is about finding me? Then tell me what it's about." "Choice." Taehyung's expression hardened. "I don't care about choice. I care about the illusion of choice." "That's worse." "Perhaps." Han leaned forward. "You believe you refused a trend, you believe you made an independent decision, but you haven't asked the most important question." Taehyung stared at the screen. "Which is, why did you refuse?" Taehyung frowned. "Because it was wrong." "Was it?" "Yes." "How did you know?" "Because I knew." Han smiled. "Exactly." Suga stepped closer. "Don't play games." "I'm not." Han's voice became serious. Every human being believes their intuition is their own. But intuition is shaped by experience, fear, memory, social pressure, attachment, reward, punishment, and thousands of invisible signals. Namjoon said, "That doesn't make choice meaningless." "Doesn't it?" "No." "Then prove it." "How?" "Make a decision that the model cannot predict." Taehyung looked at Namjoon. Han continued, "You have 48 hours. Jimin's eyes narrowed. "For what?" "To make a public decision." "What decision?" "That's the point." The screen went black. Jin stared at it. "I hate him." Suga nodded. "Get in line." Taehyung remained motionless. "He wants us to react." Namjoon looked at him. "Yes." "Then we shouldn't." "Correct." Taehyung slowly turned toward the others. "What if that's exactly what he expects?" Suga's eyes narrowed. "What are you suggesting?" "That we do something he doesn't have a category for." J-Hope frowned. "Like what?" Taehyung looked at the 7 of them. "We stop trying to beat the model." Namjoon understood before anyone else. "We make a choice it can't measure." Suga shook his head. "That's not possible." "Why?" "Because any choice can be measured afterward." "Then we don't give them the outcome." Suga stared at him. "What?" "We make the decision privately." Taehyung's voice grew steadier. "We don't announce it, we don't explain it, we don't perform it, we simply make it." Jin frowned. "And that helps how?" "Because they've built the entire system around observing behavior." Jimin's eyes widened. "If they can't observe the decision-making process, they lose the most valuable part of the data," Namjoon finished. Dr. Seo looked at Taehyung with something close to disbelief. "That might work." Suga shook his head. "No, they can still infer." Then we give them conflicting signals, Taehyung said. Everyone stared at him. We intentionally behave unpredictably. Yoongi smiled faintly. That sounds dangerous. It is. I like it. Jimin looked at Yoongi. Of course you do, Jin sighed. I can't believe we're discussing how to confuse an international behavioral prediction system. Suga looked at Taehyung. You realize what you're proposing could destroy the campaign and possibly our careers. Yes. You realize people will blame us. Yes. You realize the company may retaliate. Yes. Suga's voice softened. Then why are you willing to do it? Taehyung looked toward the dark window. Because I finally understand something. He turned back. The reason they were so afraid of my refusal wasn't because I said no. It was because I said no without asking anyone what I was supposed to feel. Nobody spoke, and maybe that's what they can't predict. Namjoon smiled faintly. An honest decision. Exactly, Suga nodded slowly. Then we need to know what we're protecting. Dr. Seo opened her laptop. The archive. No, Suga shook his head. The people in it. Dr. Seo looked at him. Yes. That's our first decision. Namjoon looked around. Agreed. The 7 members sat together around the table. For the first time in days, nobody had a script. Nobody had a statement. Nobody had an executive telling them what to say. They simply talked. They argued. They interrupted one another. They raised their voices. They admitted fears they had never said aloud. Jin confessed that he was terrified of losing the group after spending so many years believing they were almost impossible to break. J-Hope admitted that he sometimes smiled because he didn't know what else to do when everyone expected him to be the source of optimism. Jimin confessed that he often felt responsible for keeping everyone emotionally connected, even when he himself was exhausted. Yoongi admitted that his greatest fear wasn't public criticism, but watching one of the older members decide to leave because they believed they were protecting everyone else. Suga admitted that anger was easier for him than fear because anger made him feel useful. Namjoon sat quietly until everyone looked at him. My fear, he said, is that someday I'll make the wrong decision for all of you. Taehyung looked at him. You already have. Namjoon blinked. What? You think leadership means preventing every mistake? Taehyung smiled sadly. It doesn't. Namjoon lowered his head. Then what does it mean? Standing there when everyone else is scared. Namjoon looked at him for several seconds. Then he nodded. Fair. The conversation lasted for hours. The storm outside gradually weakened. Dawn began to lighten the windows. No one noticed until Jin looked at the clock. It's morning. Everyone went quiet. They had spent the entire night talking. Taehyung felt strangely lighter, not because the danger had disappeared. It hadn't, but because the fear no longer belonged to one person. It belonged to all 7 of them, and somehow that made it easier to carry. Then Dr. Seo's laptop chimed. She looked at the screen. There's a new message. Suga stood. From Han. No, who? Dr. Seo stared at the sender. Kang Hyejin. Taehyung's body went still. Open it. Dr. Seo hesitated. Are you sure? Yes. She opened the message. There was no text, only a video file. Namjoon clicked it. The screen showed a woman sitting in a dark room, short hair, silver watch, calm eyes. Taehyung recognized her instantly. Kang Hyejin looked directly into the camera. Taehyung. His breathing stopped. If you're watching this, then you found Dr. Seo, she smiled faintly. I'm sorry. Taehyung stared at the screen. For what? Her voice continued. For making you believe your refusal began this. She paused. It didn't. The room became silent. The system has been studying you since before you knew what influence meant, but there is something Dr. Seo never told you. Dr. Seo closed her eyes. Don't, Hyejin continued. You were never the target. Taehyung's face changed. Then who was? Hyejin looked into the camera. RM. Everyone turned toward Namjoon. He stared at the screen. Hyejin's expression was almost sad. Namjoon was the anomaly. Namjoon's face went pale. No, Hyejin continued. Your leadership behavior repeatedly violated the model. Every time the system predicted you would prioritize stability, you prioritized people. Every time it predicted you would choose the safest public response, you chose the most honest one. Every time it predicted you would sacrifice one member to protect the larger group, you refused. Suga slowly looked at Namjoon. Hyejin said, Taehyung was simply the first person to expose the flaw publicly. Namjoon whispered, "Why me?" Hyojin's eyes softened. "Because you were the one person the system couldn't turn into a number." The video stopped. Nobody moved. Then Suga turned toward Namjoon. "You knew?" "No, nothing." "Nothing." Taehyung stared at him. "That's why they keep watching you." Namjoon rubbed his face. "Apparently." Jimin looked at Dr. Seo. "You knew?" Dr. Seo didn't answer. "You knew Namjoon was the anomaly." "Yes." Suga's voice became dangerously quiet. "And you never told him, because telling him would have changed his behavior." "You mean you kept him ignorant to preserve the experiment?" "Yes." "That's disgusting." Dr. Seo nodded. "I know." Namjoon stood. He walked to the window. "How many years?" Dr. Seo swallowed. 7. He closed his eyes. 7 years. The number seemed to echo through the room. "They've been studying me for 7 years." "Yes." "And BTS?" "Longer." Namjoon turned around. "Then why did they wait until now?" Dr. Seo answered quietly. "Because the model reached a conclusion." "What conclusion?" "That the group could no longer be predicted as 7 individuals." Suga's expression changed. "What does that mean?" Dr. Seo looked at all of them. "It means the system stopped analyzing each member separately." Jimin whispered, "Then what is it analyzing?" Dr. Seo's answer came slowly. "The group itself." Everyone stared at her. BTS became the subject. Taehyung felt a chill move through him. "The group is the experiment." "Yes." Yoongi clenched his fists. "Then every argument measured. Every reconciliation measured. Every time we defended one another measured. Every time we almost broke measured." Jin looked devastated. "They watched all of it." Dr. Seo nodded. "And now they believe they can predict what BTS will do under extreme pressure." Taehyung looked at Namjoon. "Then let's prove them wrong." Namjoon smiled. "Together." The day passed in a strange calm. They didn't release the evidence. They didn't call the company. They didn't respond to the rumors. Instead, they worked. Suga and J-Hope organized the archive. Jimin and Jin reviewed documents for private information. Yoongi checked duplicate files. Namjoon built a timeline. Taehyung sat beside Dr. Seo and watched old recordings of the project. The deeper they went, the more disturbing the material became. There were profiles of artists, executives, journalists, activists, athletes, influencers, and ordinary people, each one reduced to probabilities. Each life turned into a prediction. Taehyung watched one file for almost an hour. It belonged to Yeho. "They predicted his death," he whispered. Dr. Seo looked at the screen. "They predicted his isolation." "That's not the same." "No." "Then why does the report call it a successful prediction?" Dr. Seo looked away. "Because the system doesn't understand morality." Taehyung stared at the report. "That's the problem." "Yes. It can predict pain and call it success." "Yes." He closed the file. "Then we don't need to destroy the system." Dr. Seo looked at him. "What?" "We need to expose what it considers success." Her eyes widened. "If people see how they measure us, they'll understand." "Exactly. That could cause an enormous backlash." "Good. You could become the center of it." "I already am." Dr. Seo studied him. "You're different from 2 years ago." Taehyung smiled. "I know. You're not afraid." "I am." He looked at her. "But now I know what I'm afraid of." "What?" "Becoming exactly what they predicted." That afternoon, the company released another statement. It accused the members of causing unnecessary confusion and suggested that one member had become emotionally overwhelmed by the pressure of global promotions. The internet exploded. Headlines appeared within minutes. Fans argued, commentators debated, some blamed Taehyung, others blamed the company, some accused BTS of arrogance, others defended them. Then a second statement appeared. This one claimed that internal disagreements had made future activities uncertain. Jin read it aloud. "They really want us to fight." Suga laughed. "They're desperate." Namjoon looked at Taehyung. "What do you think?" Taehyung shook his head. "I think they're trying to create exactly the reaction the model expects." "Which is?" "Fear, anger, division." Jimin looked at his phone. "They're already succeeding." Taehyung stood. "Then let's stop feeding it." He walked to the center of the room. "We're not going to defend ourselves individually." Suga nodded. "One statement." "No." Namjoon looked at him. "Then what?" Taehyung answered. "No statement." Everyone stared. "Nothing?" Jin asked. "Nothing." "For how long?" "Until we're ready." Suga smiled. "Now that is unpredictable." They spent the next day in silence. No posts. No interviews. No reactions. The silence itself became news. Commentators speculated wildly. Fans demanded answers. The company became increasingly aggressive. Then Han appeared on television. He claimed the entire controversy was a misunderstanding caused by emotional exhaustion. He suggested that BTS had been manipulated by an outside consultant. He named Dr. Seo. The accusation spread instantly. Dr. Seo watched the broadcast without blinking. Taehyung sat beside her. "They're sacrificing you." "Yes." "Are you okay?" She laughed quietly. "No, you don't have to pretend." "I'm not." She looked at him. "I spent years afraid that this day would come. And now I'm more afraid that I might finally feel relieved." Taehyung frowned. "Why?" "Because if I tell the truth, everything ends." "Maybe it needs to." Dr. Seo looked at him. "Your career could suffer. Maybe. Your reputation. Maybe. Your relationships." Taehyung looked toward the room where the others were arguing over documents. "Those are the things worth protecting." Dr. Seo smiled sadly. "Yeho would have liked you." Taehyung lowered his eyes. "I wish I had known him. You know him now." That evening, Namjoon called everyone into the main room. "We have a decision." Suga looked up. "What decision?" "We're releasing the archive." Everyone became silent. "Not all of it," Namjoon continued. "Only the evidence that proves the system exists, how it operates, and how our data was used." Jimin nodded. "And the private identities, protected." Jin asked, "What about the company?" "They will deny everything." "And Han, he will attack us." "The government, maybe. The public," Namjoon smiled faintly. "Some will believe us, some won't." Taehyung asked, "And if they destroy us?" Namjoon looked at him. "Then we face it together." Suga stood. "I'm in." J-Hope nodded. "Me too." Jimin raised his hand. "Obviously." Jungkook smiled. "Always." Jin sighed dramatically. "Fine, but if we're destroying our careers, I'm ordering expensive food first." Everyone laughed. It was the first genuine laughter in days. Taehyung smiled. Then Namjoon placed a hand on his shoulder. "You started this." Taehyung shook his head. "No." He looked at all 6 members. "We did." At midnight, the files were released through independent journalists, legal organizations, and researchers across several countries. No dramatic video, no emotional speech, no accusation, just evidence. The response was immediate. News outlets began analyzing the documents. Experts confirmed that the data structures were real. Researchers recognized terminology from behavioral prediction systems. Former employees began speaking anonymously. One after another, hidden stories surfaced. Artists described contracts they had never understood. Journalists described suspicious pressure campaigns. Fans discovered that some viral controversies had been artificially amplified. The story grew beyond BTS. It became global. Han disappeared from public view. The company suspended several executives. Governments announced investigations. Technology firms denied involvement. Investors panicked. And yet, inside the safe house, the 7 members sat quietly around the table. No cheering, no celebration, just exhaustion. Taehyung looked at his phone. Thousands of messages waited. Some thanked him, some cursed him, some accused him of destroying everything. He put the phone down. "Do you regret it?" Jimin asked. Taehyung thought for a long time. "Ask me tomorrow." Jimin smiled. "Fair." Namjoon looked out the window. Dawn was approaching. The sky had begun turning gray. "You know what I keep thinking?" "What?" Suga asked. "They spent years trying to predict our biggest weakness." He looked at the others. "They thought it was that we cared too much." Nobody spoke. Namjoon smiled. "They were right." Taehyung looked at him. "But they misunderstood what caring does." Jimin nodded. "It makes people stubborn. It makes them reckless," Jungkook added. Jin smiled. "It makes them annoying." J-Hope laughed. Suga looked at the group. "It also makes them impossible to control." The room became quiet again. Taehyung leaned back and closed his eyes. For the first time since the nightmare began, he felt no camera watching him. No voice telling him what emotion he was supposed to have. No prediction waiting to be fulfilled. Just the quiet breathing of 6 people he trusted. Then his phone vibrated once. Everyone looked at it. Taehyung opened the message. It came from an unknown number. There was only one sentence. "The model is broken, but the people who built it are still here." Taehyung stared at it for several seconds. Namjoon asked, "What does it say?" Taehyung considered deleting it. Instead, he turned the screen toward the others. Suga read it and sighed. "Of course." Jin rubbed his forehead. Can we have one peaceful morning? J-Hope laughed softly. Apparently not. Namjoon looked at Taehyung. Are you scared? Taehyung looked at the message, then at his 6 friends. Yes. Namjoon nodded. Me too. Taehyung smiled. Good. Why good? Because if we're scared together, they still can't predict what we'll do. Namjoon smiled back. Outside, the sun finally broke through the clouds. The city below was waking up to a world that had changed overnight. The trend that had once seemed unstoppable was already collapsing under the weight of questions no algorithm could answer. Taehyung had refused to follow it because something inside him had said no. At the time, he had thought that single refusal might destroy everything. Instead, it had forced 7 people to look directly at the machinery surrounding them and decide together that their lives would not be reduced to probabilities. They knew there would be consequences. They knew there would be lawsuits, accusations, investigations, hatred, and uncertainty. They knew some people would never believe them. But when Taehyung looked around the room, he realized that none of those things frightened him as much as the idea of surrendering his choices simply because someone had predicted them. Namjoon stood and opened the curtains. Morning light flooded the room. We should go home, he said. Nobody moved immediately. Then Jin stood. Finally, J-Hope laughed. Jimin stretched. Yoongi grabbed his jacket. Suga collected the drives. Taehyung remained seated for a moment, staring at the empty screen where the model's predictions had once appeared. Then he stood too. He didn't destroy the screen. He didn't need to. It was only a machine. The real victory had never been about breaking a machine. It had been about remembering that no machine, no corporation, no trend, no audience, and no prediction could decide who they were allowed to become. As the 7 of them walked out together, Taehyung paused at the doorway and looked back one last time. The room was quiet. The evidence was secured. The storm had passed. And somewhere beyond the city, people were waking up to uncomfortable truths. Taehyung breathed deeply, feeling the cool morning air enter his lungs. He had no idea what the next week would bring. None of them did. But for the first time, uncertainty did not feel like a threat. It felt like freedom. The doors of the building had barely closed behind them when every phone in the room began vibrating at exactly the same time. Taehyung stopped walking. Namjoon turned around. Yoongi pulled his phone from his pocket, stared at the screen, and immediately frowned. No, Suga looked at him. What? It's another statement. Jin groaned. Already, Jimin opened his own phone. His expression changed within seconds. This isn't from the company. Namjoon reached for his phone. Then who? Jimin looked up slowly. Han. The name seemed to drain the warmth from the room. Everyone gathered around the nearest table as the statement spread across dozens of news accounts. It was not an apology. It was not a denial. It was an accusation. Han Seojin claimed that the leaked archive had been manipulated, that Dr. Seo had fabricated documents after being dismissed from the project, and that BTS had knowingly participated in a coordinated attempt to damage legitimate research institutions. He claimed that Taehyung had been the person who originally requested behavioral analysis because he wanted to understand why certain fans reacted negatively to him. The allegation was absurd, but it was specific enough to create doubt. He's lying, Yoongi said immediately. Obviously, Jimin replied, but people don't need something to be true to believe it. Suga read the statement again, his jaw tightening. He knew. Knew what? Jin asked. He knew exactly which accusation would hurt us. Namjoon nodded, because he's using the data. Taehyung stared at the screen. His own name appeared in bold headlines. For a moment he couldn't hear anything else. Then he noticed something beneath the statement, a file attachment. Wait. Everyone looked at him. There's an attachment. Suga leaned over. Don't open it. Why? Because that's exactly what he wants. Taehyung looked at Namjoon. He's challenging us. Namjoon stared at the file. Yes. Then we need to know what it is. Suga shook his head. Not on a connected device. J-Hope glanced around. We're still using the Safehouse network. No, Suga said, but the phones are connected to cellular networks. Then what do? We isolate the device. Jin sighed. We're back to spy movie rules. We're past spy movie rules, Suga muttered. We're living in them. Taehyung placed his phone on the table. Copy it. Suga connected a secure device. The file downloaded slowly. Nobody spoke while they waited. When it finished, Suga opened it in an isolated environment. The first image appeared. It was a photograph of Taehyung sitting alone in a conference room 2 years earlier. The second showed Namjoon leaving the same building. The third showed Jimin speaking with a project employee. The fourth showed Jungkook entering an elevator. Jin stared at the screen. These are all real. Yes, Dr. Seo said, but the context is missing. Suga scrolled. There were hundreds of photographs, meetings, hallways, parking lots, airports, hotel entrances, recording studios, even private moments that had never appeared online. Taehyung's face hardened. They followed us everywhere, Dr. Seo whispered, apparently. Then another file appeared. It was an audio recording. Suga pressed play. Taehyung heard his own voice from 2 years earlier. I don't trust this. The recording continued. Another voice answered, you don't need to understand everything, just sign it. Taehyung froze. It was the woman with the silver watch. What happens if I don't? She asked in the recording. Taehyung's younger voice answered, then I don't sign. The woman laughed softly. You really think you have that choice? The recording ended. Nobody moved. Taehyung stared at the screen. I forgot that. Namjoon looked at him. You forgot? Yes. Taehyung's fingers trembled. I remember the room, I remember the form, but I don't remember her saying that. Dr. Seo's face had gone pale. Because the original recording was edited, Suga turned sharply. What? They removed that section from the official archive. Why? Because it proves coercion. Taehyung looked at her. You heard it before, yes, and you still let me believe I freely agreed. Dr. Seo's eyes filled. I was wrong. Suga's voice became cold. You were more than wrong, I know. You watched them manipulate him. Yes, you watched them manipulate all of us. Yes, and now you want forgiveness. No. Her voice broke. I want you to know the truth. Taehyung turned away. He couldn't look at her. The anger inside him was too complicated. He wanted to blame her. He did blame her. But beneath the anger was something worse. The realization that she had been afraid and fear had made her choose silence. He understood fear. That was what made forgiveness so difficult. We can't stay here, Namjoon said. Why? Jimin asked. Because Han just showed us that he still has access to material that wasn't in the archive. Suga nodded. He's holding something back. Exactly. Dr. Seo suddenly looked toward the window. He's not holding it back. What? He's giving us a warning. Namjoon turned. About what? Dr. Seo pointed at the photograph of Taehyung. Look at the background. Suga zoomed in. There was a small clock on the wall. What's important about that? Dr. Seo's expression changed. That clock wasn't in the building 2 years ago. Taehyung frowned. Then where was it? The new research center. Namjoon's eyes narrowed. So the photograph is recent. Yes, but it shows Taehyung 2 years ago. Then someone recreated the room. Suga stared at the screen. Or someone has access to the original footage and modified the background. Can that be done? Jungkook asked. Yes, Suga replied, but it would require serious resources. Han has serious resources. Maybe. Namjoon looked at Dr. Seo. What does he want us to think? She hesitated. That the past can be rewritten. Taehyung looked up. And if we believe that, you'll stop trusting your own memories. The room went silent. Taehyung suddenly understood the psychological attack. It wasn't enough to accuse him publicly. They wanted him to question himself. If they could make him doubt what he remembered, they could make every accusation against the project look plausible. That's what the model does, he whispered. It makes people uncertain. Namjoon nodded. Then we don't let them isolate us. Suga looked at him. We need witnesses. Agreed. Independent ones. Yes. Lawyers. Yes. Researchers. Yes. And people who were inside the project. Dr. Seo nodded. I know several. Then contact them. She looked at him. Some are terrified. Give them a choice. They may refuse. That's their right. Taehyung looked at Namjoon. You're not going to pressure them. No, even if it costs us. Especially then. Taehyung smiled faintly. That's why they couldn't predict you. Namjoon looked away. Maybe. Suga laughed softly. Maybe. You still haven't accepted it. Accepted what? That you're the anomaly. Namjoon sighed. I'm not an anomaly. The evidence disagrees. The evidence says I'm stubborn. Jin nodded. That is definitely true. Everyone laughed, but the laughter faded quickly when another alert appeared. A major international news network had just published a breaking report claiming that several anonymous sources inside BTS's management team believed Taehyung had become increasingly difficult to work with. The report included alleged messages between staff members. Taehyung read them. These aren't real. How do you know? Yoongi asked. Because I know these people. He pointed at one name. She doesn't text like this. Jimin looked at him. How can you tell? She always uses emojis. Jin nodded seriously. That's actually strong evidence. Suga stared at him. You're joking. I'm not. This is serious. Exactly. Jin pointed at the screen. Fake people never understand emoji habits. J-Hope laughed. He's right. Even Namjoon smiled. Taehyung felt the tension loosen for a moment. Then his phone rang. It was a private number. He answered. Hello? Nobody spoke. He waited. Who is this? A woman's voice finally came through. You shouldn't have released the archive. Taehyung recognized it immediately. Kang Hyejin. He stood. Where are you? You still think this is about location? Then tell me what it's about. Memory. What does that mean? You believe you remember the night you signed the agreement. I do. No, her voice was calm. You remember what they allowed you to remember. Taehyung's stomach tightened. What are you saying? You were drugged. The room went silent. Taehyung looked at the others. What? Not enough to knock you unconscious, just enough to interfere with memory formation. You're lying. Ask Dr. Seo. Everyone turned toward her. Dr. Seo's face collapsed. Taehyung's voice became cold. Is it true? She didn't answer. Dr. Seo. Yes. The word came out like a confession. Taehyung's hand tightened around the phone. You knew? Yes. You knew I had been drugged? Yes. And you never told me. I was ordered not to. Taehyung's eyes filled with tears. You keep saying that. Hyejin's voice came through the phone. She wasn't the only one. Taehyung froze. What? There were 7 of you. His blood ran cold. What are you talking about? You think only you signed the agreement. Nobody moved. No, Taehyung whispered. All 7 of you were exposed. Namjoon stepped closer. What does that mean? Hyejin heard his voice. RM. Namjoon's face hardened. Don't call me that. You always hated being reduced to a label. Who are you? You know who I am. I know your name. Then you know enough. No. Namjoon took the phone from Taehyung. Tell me what you did to us. Hyejin remained silent for several seconds. Then she said, I didn't do anything to you. Then who did? The people you trusted. Namjoon's jaw tightened. Names. Not yet. Why? Because if I tell you everything now, you'll make the wrong decision. Suga laughed bitterly. You don't get to decide what we choose. Hyejin replied, that's exactly what the system taught me. Then the call ended. Namjoon handed the phone back. Nobody spoke. Finally, Yoongi asked, were we drugged? Dr. Seo looked at the floor. Not all of you. Who? I don't know. You're lying, Suga said. No. Then tell us everything. I don't have all the records, but you have enough. Yes. Then show us. Dr. Seo hesitated. There is a file. Where? At the original research center. Then we're going there. Namjoon immediately shook his head. No. Why? Suga asked. Because that's where they want us. Maybe. It's a trap. Probably. Then why would we walk into it? Suga stepped closer. Because if the answer is there, we need it. Namjoon looked at him. We don't need to know everything tonight. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Suga's voice rose. No, you don't. You're still trying to protect everyone. That's exactly what they want. They want us to keep behaving like we always do. Namjoon snapped, and you want us to rush into a building controlled by people who have been manipulating us for years. Yes, if that's where the truth is. That's reckless. So what? We wait for them to come here. We gather evidence. We've gathered evidence. We need legal protection. By the time we get it, they'll erase everything. Then we make copies. They can erase copies. Then we release everything immediately and expose innocent people. Suga stopped. Namjoon stepped closer. That's the difference between us right now. You're thinking about winning. I'm thinking about what happens after. Suga's eyes flashed. Don't tell me I'm thinking about winning. Then tell me what you're thinking about. I'm thinking about Yeho. The room fell silent. Suga's voice broke. I'm thinking about every person whose life was destroyed while people like us kept going to work and smiling for cameras. I'm thinking about the fact that we had no idea. I'm thinking about how easy it was for them to make us believe everything was normal. Namjoon stared at him. I know. Do you? Yes. Then stop asking me to wait. Namjoon's eyes hardened. And stop asking me to gamble your life because you're angry. Suga stepped backward. Fine. He turned away. Then I'll go alone. Yoongi immediately stood. No, stay out of this. I can't. Why? Because we're 7. Suga stared at him. Yoongi's voice became firm. That's what they are afraid of. Taehyung nodded. He's right. Namjoon closed his eyes. I hate this. Jin sighed. I think we're all allowed to hate it. Jimin walked to Namjoon. Taehyung. Namjoon looked at him. We can't keep protecting each other by making decisions for each other. Namjoon didn't respond. It told us once that leadership isn't controlling what happens. It's standing there when everyone is scared. Namjoon's eyes softened. You remembered that. I remember everything you say. Namjoon smiled sadly. Sometimes I wish you didn't, Jimin smiled. Then let's go together, Dr. Seo finally spoke. If you go, you need to understand one thing. Everyone turned toward her. The original center isn't abandoned. Who is there? The people who built the system. How many? I don't know. Security? Extensive. Weapons? Possibly. Then why go? Dr. Seo looked at Taehyung. Because Hyejin wouldn't have called if she didn't want you there. Taehyung frowned. You trust her? No. Then why? Because I fear her less than I fear the people she is running from. They left just before midnight. The drive to the research center took nearly an hour. Nobody talked much. The city passed outside the windows, bright and indifferent. Taehyung sat beside Namjoon in the second vehicle. Hyung, if something happens, Namjoon looked at him. Don't. I'm serious. So am I. Promise me you won't sacrifice yourself. Namjoon smiled. That's your line. I know, you stole it. Maybe. Namjoon looked out the window. Then I'll promise. Really? Really? Taehyung nodded. Good, but you promise me something. What? If we find something that hurts, don't assume it means you're guilty. Taehyung looked down. Okay, promise. I promise. The research center appeared at the edge of an industrial district. It was enormous. Concrete walls. Black windows, security cameras, no visible sign. Dr. Seo parked several blocks away. We walk from here. Suga looked at the building. This is supposed to be abandoned, officially. Jin stared. It looks very alive. It is. They moved through an alley and approached a service entrance. Dr. Seo entered an old access code. The door opened. Inside, the air smelled of dust and chemicals. They descended 3 levels underground. The deeper they went, the colder it became. Finally, they reached a corridor lined with glass rooms. Taehyung saw monitors inside. Some were still active. One screen displayed a profile, another displayed a map, another displayed a timeline of BTS's career. They're still running, Suga whispered. Dr. Seo nodded. Yes. They entered the central laboratory. There were 7 chairs arranged in a circle. Each had a name. RM, Jin, Suga, J-Hope, Jimin, V. Jungkook. Taehyung stopped. What is this? Dr. Seo looked devastated. The original experiment. Namjoon stepped toward his chair. On the desk was a file. He opened it. The first page contained a photograph of himself from years ago. Beneath it were predictions, leadership response, emotional suppression, protective behavior, group cohesion, conflict tolerance. Namjoon flipped through the pages. They predicted everything. Suga opened his file. They predicted my anger. Jimin looked at his. They predicted my guilt. Jungkook's hands trembled. They predicted my fear of losing everyone. Jin stared at his. They predicted my humor. J-Hope whispered. They predicted my optimism. Taehyung opened his file. They predicted my refusal. Namjoon looked at him. Then what's missing? Taehyung turned the page. The final line was blank. He looked at the others. The outcome. A voice came from the darkness. Exactly. Everyone spun around. Kang Hyejin stepped into the light. She wore a dark coat and the same silver watch. She looked older than Taehyung remembered from the recording, but her eyes were exactly the same. Suga stepped forward. You. Hyejin looked at him. Yes. Namjoon stood between her and the others. Don't come any closer, she stopped. I didn't bring you here to hurt you. Then why? Because this is where it ends. Taehyung stared at her. What ends? The experiment. You expect us to believe you. No. Hyejin looked at the 7 chairs. You shouldn't believe anyone anymore. Namjoon asked, who is controlling this place? Hyejin looked at him. You are. Everyone froze. What? Not you personally, she pointed at the 7 chairs. The system was designed to observe how groups behave when their members are forced to choose between individual safety and collective loyalty. Suga's face hardened. And now the system has reached the only conclusion it was never supposed to reach. Jimin whispered, what conclusion? Hyejin looked directly at Taehyung. That loyalty cannot be predicted, she looked at Namjoon. Because the moment one person becomes willing to sacrifice for another, the model breaks. Namjoon stared at her. Then why keep doing it? Hyojin's expression changed. Because people invested billions in proving that human beings could be controlled. And you, I believed them. Until Yeho, her voice cracked. He was the first person who made me realize the system wasn't predicting people. It was creating the conditions that produced the predictions. Taehyung understood. It wasn't predicting behavior. It was manufacturing it. Exactly. Hyojin looked at Dr. Seo. She tried to stop me. Dr. Seo shook her head. Too late. Yes, Hyojin's eyes filled. Much too late. Suddenly every monitor in the room turned on. A countdown appeared. 09:59. What's happening? Yoongi asked. Hyojin looked toward the ceiling. They know you're here, Suga cursed. Who? Hyojin answered quietly. The people who never wanted you to see this room. Namjoon stepped toward her. How do we stop it? Hyojin smiled sadly. You don't. Then what do we do? You choose. The countdown reached 09:32. Taehyung looked at the 7 chairs. Choose what? Hyojin said. Whether you leave together or separately. Suga stared at her. That's it. No. Then what? If you leave together, the system will classify the experiment as a collective resistance event. And if we leave separately, it will classify you as individuals and the model will survive. Namjoon looked at the others. Then we leave together. Hyojin shook her head. You don't understand. What? If you leave together, one of you will be arrested. The room went silent. What? Hyojin pointed toward the door. Security has orders to detain one member as the primary subject. Taehyung's stomach dropped. Who? Hyojin looked at Namjoon. Him. Namjoon didn't move. Suga immediately stepped forward. Then I'll stay. No, Namjoon said it quietly. No, Suga looked at him. I'm serious. So am I. Hyojin's voice interrupted them. That's what they want. Namjoon looked at her. Then what do you expect us to do? Make a choice they didn't write. Taehyung stared at the countdown. 07:41. What choice? Hyojin looked at all 7. Refuse the premise. Namjoon understood. We don't choose who stays. Exactly. We all stay. Hyojin's eyes widened. That wasn't one of the options. Taehyung smiled faintly. That's the point. Suga laughed. I like this. Jimin stepped forward. All 7. Jin nodded. All 7. J-Hope smiled. Together. Yoongi stepped beside them. Always. Namjoon looked at Taehyung. You sure? Yes. Even if they arrest someone. They can't arrest 7 people without creating a completely different problem. Suga smiled. Now you're thinking. The countdown reached 05:00. Doors opened around the laboratory. Security personnel appeared. Hyojin stepped backward. They'll give you one chance. Namjoon stood at the center. We're not taking it. A man in a black suit approached. RM stepped forward. Namjoon didn't move. This is your final warning. Suga stepped beside him. Then warn all of us. Jin moved forward. 7. J-Hope joined. 7. Jimin. 7. Yoongi. 7. Taehyung. 7. The security team hesitated. The man looked confused. You don't understand. Namjoon smiled. We understand perfectly. He looked at the others. No one goes alone. The man raised his radio. Initiate containment. The doors locked. Alarms sounded. Taehyung felt fear surge through him. He reached for Yoongi's hand. Yoongi squeezed it. Jimin took J-Hope's hand. Jin stood beside Suga. Namjoon remained in the middle. Hyojin watched them with tears in her eyes. You finally broke it, she whispered. The central monitor flickered. The prediction screen displayed 7 probabilities. Then the numbers began changing rapidly. 91%, 67%, 43%, 18%, 2%. Error, error, error. The system crashed. Every monitor went black. The security personnel froze. The doors unlocked. Nobody moved. Then the lights returned. The laboratory was silent. Namjoon looked at Hyojin. Is that it? She smiled through tears. No, she pointed toward the ceiling. Now they know they can't predict you. Taehyung looked at the broken monitors. For the first time, he didn't feel like a subject. He felt like a person who had chosen. The 7 of them walked out of the laboratory together. Behind them, Hyojin remained alone in the room, staring at the empty chairs. Dr. Seo paused beside her. What will you do now? Hyojin looked at the chairs. What I should have done years ago. Which is, tell the truth. Dr. Seo nodded. Then come with us. Hyojin looked surprised. Why? Because you don't have to face it alone. Hyojin's eyes filled again. She slowly nodded. Outside, the first light of morning was beginning to appear. The 7 members emerged from the facility with Hyojin and Dr. Seo behind them. Police sirens sounded in the distance. News helicopters appeared above the industrial district. The world was about to learn another truth. Taehyung looked at Namjoon. "You promised not to sacrifice yourself." Namjoon smiled. "So did you. I kept mine." "So did I." Suga walked past them. "You two are terrible at keeping promises." Jin laughed. "They're actually excellent at it." Jimin looked toward the sunrise. "What happens now?" Nobody answered immediately. Finally Namjoon said, "We find out." Taehyung breathed in deeply. The air smelled of rain, concrete, and the faint smoke of the city waking up. For years, someone had tried to predict what they would do when pushed into fear. They had measured their anger, their loyalty, their exhaustion, their love, their arguments, their reunions, their mistakes, and their courage. But they had never understood the simplest thing. The 7 of them did not stay together because an algorithm predicted that they would. They stayed together because, every time they were given the chance to walk away, they chose each other again. And as they stood beneath the pale morning sky, Taehyung realized that the most dangerous decision they could make was also the simplest. They would continue choosing for themselves. The first camera flashed before Taehyung even realized the reporters had reached the street, and within seconds the quiet morning outside the research facility exploded into a wall of shouting voices. Camera shutters, security radios, and questions thrown at them from every direction. "Taehyung, did you know about the experiment? RM, were you secretly involved with the research center? Is BTS accusing the government of manipulating fans? Jimin, are the leaked documents authentic? Jungkook, are the 7 members still united? Suga, did you threaten a former executive? Hyojin, are you the architect behind Project Horizon?" Taehyung stopped walking. The sunlight was barely visible through the gray clouds, yet the entire street seemed brighter than a stage because hundreds of camera flashes were exploding in his face. Jungkook instinctively moved closer. "Don't look at them." Taehyung swallowed. "They're everywhere." "I know. How did they get here so fast?" Suga answered from behind them, "Because someone told them." Namjoon looked toward the security barricade. Nobody moved separately. A reporter shouted Taehyung's name again. Another microphone appeared inches from his face. "Did you participate willingly?" Taehyung's jaw tightened. "Move back." "Did you know BTS was being studied?" "Move back." "Are you accusing your own company?" "Move back." The reporter kept pushing forward. Jungkook stepped between them. He said, "Move back." The man's expression hardened. "Are you threatening the press?" "No," Jungkook replied. "I'm asking you to respect personal space." Suga laughed bitterly, "And there it is." Namjoon looked at him. "What?" "The first headline." He pointed toward a nearby camera. "Jungkook threatens journalist." Jungkook stared at him. "You're joking." "I wish." Jimin looked at the growing crowd. "They're trying to provoke us." Namjoon nodded. "Don't give them anything." Hyojin stood behind them, pale and exhausted. She had not spoken since leaving the building. Dr. Seo remained beside her. Suddenly, a black vehicle stopped across the street. 3 people in suits emerged. One held up an official-looking document. "Kang Hyojin." Hyojin froze. "Don't answer." Namjoon stepped in front of her. "Who are you?" The man displayed a badge. "Federal Investigation Division." Suga narrowed his eyes. "Which division?" "Behavioral Security." "That isn't an answer." The man looked annoyed. "We have authority to question Ms. Kang." Hyojin whispered, "No." Taehyung heard her. "What is it?" "They don't exist." Namjoon's eyes sharpened. "Step back." The man raised the document. "You are obstructing an investigation. Show us your warrant. This is sufficient." "No," Namjoon said. "It isn't." The man looked toward the cameras. "You're making this worse for yourselves." Suga stepped forward. "That's exactly what people say when they want you to stop asking questions." The man reached toward Hyojin. Jungkook immediately blocked him. "Don't touch her." The man turned. "Move." "No." The atmosphere changed instantly. Security personnel moved closer. Reporters shouted louder. Someone yelled, "BTS BLOCKS official INVSTIGTORS." Another camera zoomed in. Hyojin grabbed Jungkook's sleeve. "Don't." Jungkook looked back. "Why?" "Because this is what they want." Namjoon heard her. "Everyone back," Suga protested. "Namjoon, back." His tone left no room for argument. They stepped away. The supposed investigators immediately surrounded Hyojin. One whispered something in her ear. She went pale. What did he say? Taehyung asked. Hyejin looked at him. He said if I don't go willingly, they'll arrest someone else. Who? She looked toward Namjoon. Him. Namjoon's face became expressionless. Then I'm coming. Hyejin shook her head. No. If they want me, they can take me. Taehyung grabbed Namjoon's arm. Don't. Namjoon looked at him. We promised. You promised not to sacrifice yourself. I remember. Then don't walk into that car. Namjoon looked at the men surrounding Hyejin. What do you suggest? Taehyung's voice shook. We expose them. Suga immediately understood. He pulled out his phone, already recording. One of the men noticed. Put that away. Suga smiled coldly. No, this is an official matter. Then you won't mind being recorded. The man stepped closer. You are obstructing an investigation. Suga held up his phone. Say that again. The man stopped. Suga's smile disappeared. Louder. The reporters became silent enough to hear. The man looked around. Too many cameras, too many witnesses. He stepped backward. We'll contact your representatives. Good, Namjoon said. Use a real number. The men returned to their vehicle. It drove away. The reporters immediately surged forward again. Who were they? Were they fake officials? Are you accusing law enforcement? Did they threaten you? Namjoon looked at the cameras. For the first time, he stepped forward willingly. We will answer one question. The crowd quieted. Did BTS manipulate the archive? Namjoon shook his head. No. Then what happened? We discovered evidence that our personal data was collected and analyzed without informed consent. Are you saying the government did this? We are saying we are investigating who did it. Are you afraid? Namjoon looked at the other 6 members. Yes. The reporters reacted immediately. What are you afraid of? Namjoon answered, losing control of our own decisions. The cameras flashed. Do you trust each other completely? Do you trust your company? Namjoon paused. That pause became tomorrow's headline before he even answered. Trust has to be rebuilt. The crowd erupted. Jin whispered, that was dangerous. Namjoon replied quietly, it was honest. They were escorted into waiting vehicles. The moment the doors closed, Suga turned toward Namjoon. You just declared war on the company. No. You basically did. I said trust has to be rebuilt. That's worse. Jimin looked at him. He's right. Namjoon sighed. Would you rather I lie? Suga shook his head. No. Then don't complain when honesty has consequences. Suga looked away. I'm not complaining. You are. Fine, I'm angry. At me. At everyone. Taehyung leaned back. We should stop fighting each other. Suga turned toward him. I'm not fighting you. Not yet. Suga stared at him, then laughed. Fair. Their vehicles drove through the city toward a temporary security location. None of them knew that the footage from the street had already become the most discussed story online. Within an hour, hashtags appeared in dozens of countries. Some supported BTS. Others accused them of hypocrisy. Some claimed the entire controversy was fabricated for publicity. Others demanded criminal investigations. Experts appeared on television. Commentators argued over the meaning of the leaked files. The more they tried to explain, the less certain the public became. And somewhere inside a private office, several executives watched the footage in silence. One of them finally spoke. He admitted distrust. Another nodded. Good, good. Yes, the model predicts that once trust between the members and management weakens, internal fractures will appear. A third person looked at the screen. But the group is still together, for now. And Hyejin contained soon. Dr. Seo compromised. The archive, public, silence. Then the oldest executive spoke. Then we changed the experiment. Back at the safe location, the 7 members sat around a conference table with lawyers, security specialists, and independent investigators. Hyejin sat at the end, looking exhausted. There is something you need to understand, she said. The archive you released was only one layer. Suga frowned. How many layers? 5. Jin leaned back. Of course. The first layer contains collection data. The second contains behavioral profiles. The third contains predictive models. The fourth contains intervention strategies. Jimin's expression darkened. Intervention, methods for changing behavior. Jungkook looked disturbed. And the fifth, Hyejin looked directly at Taehyung. Counterfactual simulation. Taehyung frowned. What's that? They simulate what would happen if you made different choices. Namjoon understood. They didn't just predict what we'd do. They simulated alternate versions of your lives. Taehyung stared at her. Explain. Hyejin took a breath. They created thousands of scenarios. What if Taehyung had accepted the campaign? What if Yoongi had left the group? What if Jimin had publicly criticized management? What if Suga had refused a project? What if Jin had retired? What if J-Hope had moved abroad? What if RM had stepped down as leader? Jin's face went pale. They simulated all of that. Yes. Why? To identify the smallest event that would cause the largest change. Suga's eyes narrowed. A trigger. Exactly. Namjoon looked at Taehyung. That's what they were looking for. Hyejin nodded. A trigger that would fracture the group. Taehyung's stomach tightened. And they found one. Yes. What? Hyejin looked at him. You. The room fell silent. Me. Your refusal was predicted to create a conflict. Taehyung shook his head. But we didn't fracture. That's why the system failed. Then why keep pushing? Because they believe they can still create the fracture. Suga slammed his palm against the table. How? Hyejin looked at him. By making one member believe the others have betrayed him. Everyone looked at one another. Who? Jimin asked. Hyejin didn't answer. Namjoon stood. Tell us. I don't know. You know enough. No, the information is encrypted. Then decrypt it. I can't. Suga leaned forward. You built the system. I helped build the first version. Then you know how it works. Not anymore. You're lying. Hyejin's voice hardened. You think I want this? Suga stopped. I think everyone has been lying. Hyejin stood abruptly. Then don't trust me. Gladly. But don't pretend your anger makes you immune. Suga's eyes flashed. What does that mean? It means they know you better than you think. Suga stepped toward her. Say that again. They know which emotion you hide behind anger. Suga froze. Hyejin continued. They know what happens when you feel helpless. Stop. They know you become aggressive when you think someone you love is being manipulated. Stop. They know you would rather be hated than useless. Suga's eyes filled with tears he refused to let fall. Stop. Hyejin stopped. The room became silent. Namjoon looked at Suga. You okay? Suga nodded without looking at him. Fine. You're not. I said I'm fine. You don't have to be. Suga finally looked up. That's the problem. His voice cracked. They know that too. Nobody spoke. He sat down slowly. They know all of us. Taehyung moved closer and sat beside him. But knowing isn't controlling. Suga laughed softly. You keep saying that because I believe it. Even now, especially now. Hyejin watched them quietly. That's what they never understood. Namjoon looked at her. What? People don't become predictable because they have patterns. They become predictable when they believe their patterns define them. Jimin frowned. Then we change the pattern. Yes. Yoongi smiled faintly. That sounds easier than it is. It isn't easy. Hyejin looked at the seven. That's why they chose you. The meeting continued for hours. They learned about shell companies, hidden data centers, private research contracts, and secret partnerships. But the most disturbing revelation came near dawn. Hyejin opened a file labeled Family Variables. Taehyung immediately frowned. What's that? Hyejin didn't answer. Namjoon looked at her. Open it, she hesitated. You may not want to see this. Open it. The file contained profiles of relatives and friends connected to the members, not detailed enough to expose everything but enough to identify vulnerabilities. Emergency contacts, travel patterns, public appearances, medical appointments, schools, favorite restaurants, places visited regularly. Taehyung's blood ran cold. They tracked our families. Hyejin nodded. Yoongi stared at the screen. They know where my family goes. Yes, Jimin's face tightened. How long? Years, Jin whispered. This is too much. J-Hope stood abruptly. I'm going outside. Namjoon looked at him. Wait, I need air. I'll come with you. J-Hope shook his head. No, I need to be alone. He left. Jin followed a few seconds later. I'll make sure he doesn't do anything stupid. Suga watched them go. He's scared. We all are, Jimin said. Taehyung looked at the family profiles. This is why they never needed to threaten us directly. Namjoon nodded. They could threaten people around us. Exactly. Yoongi's hands were shaking. Taehyung reached across the table and held his wrist. Hey, Yoongi looked at him. They're not getting to them. How can you promise that? I can't. Yoongi looked away. Then don't promise. Taehyung squeezed his wrist. Okay. You always say things like you know everything will be fine. I don't. Then why? Taehyung thought for a moment. Because sometimes people need someone to believe before they can believe themselves. Yoongi looked at him. Do you believe? I'm trying. That's not an answer. It's the honest one. Yoongi nodded. Okay, Namjoon watched them, his expression softened, then his phone vibrated, he checked it, his face changed. What? Suga asked. Namjoon didn't answer. Namjoon. He slowly turned the phone around. It showed a message from an unknown number. Stop digging or the first family member will pay. The room went silent. Jimin whispered no. Suga stood immediately. Call security. Namjoon shook his head. We don't know if it's real. We don't take chances. Hyejin looked at the message. It's real. Taehyung looked at her. How do you know? Because they use that wording when they want to force immediate compliance. Who? The intervention team. Suga grabbed his jacket. Where are they? Don't go. I'm not staying here. That's what they want. Then what do you suggest? Hyejin looked at Namjoon. Do exactly what they don't expect. Namjoon stared at the message. We contact every family member ourselves. Jimin nodded. Immediately. No panic. Suga frowned. That's impossible. Then controlled panic. Jin returned to the room. What's happening? Nobody answered. He saw the message. Oh, J-Hope came in behind him. What happened? Jin showed him. J-Hope's face went white. We need to call them. Already doing it. Phones came out. Calls began. One by one they reached family members. Some answered immediately. Some didn't. Those unanswered calls created unbearable silence. Taehyung called again. No response. Again. Nothing. His breathing became shallow. Namjoon looked at him. Don't assume the worst. They're not answering. That doesn't mean anything. It means something. Taehyung. They never ignore me. His voice broke. Yoongi put a hand on his shoulder. Keep calling. Then the phone finally connected. Taehyung's heart jumped. Hello, a familiar voice answered. Why are you calling so early? Taehyung closed his eyes. I just wanted to hear your voice. There was a pause. Are you okay? Taehyung swallowed. Yes. Sounds strange. I'm fine. You're lying. He smiled despite himself. Maybe. The call ended peacefully. One by one the others received similar confirmations. Everyone was safe for now, but the threat had accomplished something. It had forced them to feel vulnerable again. Later that morning an emergency legal team arrived. They advised the members to disappear from public view temporarily. Absolutely not, Namjoon said. The lawyer blinked. You should not be visible while threats are active. We disappear, the narrative becomes that we're guilty. Safety comes first. Safety for whom? For all of you. Then we protect ourselves while speaking. The lawyer sighed. You understand the risks? Yes. Physical risks? Yes. Legal risks? Yes. Career risks? Yes. Then why remain public? Namjoon looked at the other members. Because they are using our silence as evidence. The lawyer looked at Taehyung. And you? Taehyung answered quietly. I'm done letting fear decide when I speak. The lawyer sighed. Then at least coordinate your message. Suga immediately said no. Why? Because that's what got us here. Jimin nodded. If we all say the same thing, they'll call it rehearsed. Jin smiled. And if we say different things, they'll call us divided. Exactly. The lawyer looked frustrated. Then what do you want? Taehyung answered. The truth. The lawyer stared at him. That's not a strategy. It is now. That afternoon, they agreed to appear publicly together, not for a concert. Not for promotion, not for entertainment, a press conference. The announcement alone caused chaos. The company demanded cancellation. Several executives threatened legal action. Anonymous sources claimed the members were being manipulated by Hyejin. News outlets predicted an explosive confrontation. Fans waited. The 7 members sat backstage in silence. Jin looked at Taehyung. Are you nervous? Terrified. Good. Taehyung laughed. Why? Because if you weren't nervous, I'd worry. J-Hope adjusted his jacket. Nobody has prepared a speech. Namjoon shook his head. No speeches. Jimin looked at him. Then what? We answer questions. Suga smiled. That's going to be messy. Probably. Yoongi looked at Taehyung. Ready? Taehyung nodded. No, Yoongi smiled. Me neither. The doors opened. They walked onto the stage together. Hundreds of reporters stood before them. Cameras flashed. The room became almost unbearably bright. Namjoon approached the microphone. We are not here to defend ourselves from every accusation. The room quieted. We are here because we believe people deserve to know what happened. Questions erupted. Did BTS knowingly participate in behavioral research? Namjoon answered no. Did Taehyung refuse the global campaign? Yes. Why? Taehyung stepped forward. Because I didn't believe it represented what we wanted to say. Were you pressured? Yes. Were you drugged? The room exploded. Taehyung paused. Could hear his own heartbeat. Then he answered. I was given something that affected my memory. I did not know that at the time. Gasps spread through the room. Who gave it to you? Taehyung looked toward Hyejin. We are still investigating. Did your company know? Namjoon answered. We are investigating that too. Do you blame your company? Suga leaned toward his microphone. Blame isn't the word I'd use. The reporter asked. What word would you use? Suga looked directly at the cameras. Betrayal. Silence. Jimin closed his eyes briefly. The word spread through the room like an electric shock. Another reporter asked, do you still consider yourselves BTS? Jin smiled sadly. Yes. Even after everything, especially after everything. A reporter shouted, is RM still your leader? Namjoon looked at the other six. They can answer. Jin spoke first. Yes, J-Hope said. Absolutely. Suga nodded. Unfortunately. Laughter broke through the tension. Jimin smiled. Yes. Jungkook nodded. Always? Taehyung looked at Namjoon. He doesn't get to escape that easily. The room laughed again. Namjoon smiled. Apparently not. Then a reporter asked the question nobody expected. Do you regret releasing the archive? The members looked at one another. Taehyung stepped toward the microphone. No, even though innocent people may have been affected, we protected private identities, but lives were disrupted. Yes. Would you do it again? Taehyung looked at Namjoon. Namjoon looked at the others. Then all seven nodded. Taehyung answered, yes, the reporter pressed. Why? Taehyung's voice became steady. Because if we had stayed silent simply because speaking was dangerous, then the people who built the system would have learned the most important lesson of all, that fear works. The room fell silent. We don't want anyone to think fear is proof that they should obey. Cameras flashed continuously. Another reporter asked, what happens now? Namjoon answered, we continue investigating. Will BTS continue performing? Namjoon smiled faintly. We don't know, the room reacted. Why not? Because for the first time we want to decide that without anyone predicting what the answer should be. Taehyung looked at the audience. Maybe that's the only answer we can give honestly. The press conference lasted nearly 2 hours. Questions became more aggressive. Some accused them of destroying their own legacy. Others demanded names. One reporter suggested the members were exploiting a conspiracy narrative to regain control over their careers. Suga leaned toward the microphone. If we wanted publicity, there are much easier ways. Another reporter asked whether Hyejin should be trusted. Jimin answered no. Hyejin looked at him from backstage. Jimin continued, but trust isn't the same as truth. We don't have to trust someone to investigate what they say. That sentence became one of the most quoted lines of the day. When the conference ended, the 7 members returned backstage. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then Jin exhaled. I think I aged 10 years, J-Hope laughed. Only 10, Suga collapsed into a chair. That was horrible, Jimin smiled. You handled it well. I nearly insulted 3 reporters. Only 3, Jungkook laughed. Taehyung looked at Namjoon. You okay? Namjoon nodded. Yes, really. No, Taehyung smiled. Good, Namjoon laughed. Why do you keep saying that? Because you're finally admitting you're human. Namjoon shook his head. You are impossible. Maybe. Suga suddenly looked at his phone. His expression changed. Guys, everyone turned. What? The company just announced that our management contracts are under review. Jin's face fell. What does that mean? Suga read further. They may suspend activities indefinitely. Jimin went quiet. Jungkook looked at Namjoon. What do we do? Namjoon didn't answer immediately. He looked at the 6 members. For years, decisions like this had been made in offices far away from them. Contracts, schedules, releases, promotions, interviews, now everything was uncertain. He finally said, we go home. Suga frowned. That's it, tonight. No plan, no plan, Taehyung smiled. That might be the first truly unpredictable thing we've done. Namjoon nodded. Exactly. They returned to their separate homes for the first time in days. Taehyung entered his apartment alone. The silence felt enormous. He dropped his keys on the table and stood there without moving. The city lights reflected across the windows. He expected relief. Instead, he felt empty. He walked to the kitchen, poured water, and stared at the glass. Then his phone vibrated. One message, from Namjoon. You okay? Taehyung smiled. He typed back, not really. You. The reply came quickly, and me neither. Another message appeared, but I think that's okay. Taehyung stared at it. Then he typed, we don't have to know what happens next. Namjoon replied, we never did. Taehyung put the phone down. He walked to the window and opened it. Cool air entered the room. Somewhere below, cars moved through the streets. Somewhere far away, reporters were still talking. Lawyers were preparing documents. Executives were holding emergency meetings. Investigators were opening files. The world was changing around them. Yet for the first time, Taehyung didn't feel compelled to predict tomorrow. He didn't need to know whether BTS would perform again. He didn't need to know whether the company would survive. He didn't need to know whether the public would forgive them. He only knew that when morning came, he would call the others, and they would talk. They would argue. They would laugh. They would probably fight, but they would choose again. He closed his eyes. For years, someone had tried to turn their lives into numbers. Tonight, Taehyung finally understood that the most powerful thing about being human was not knowing what you would do. It was having the freedom to decide when the moment arrived. His phone vibrated one more time. A group message. Jin, who is ordering food? J-Hope, it's midnight. Jin, exactly. Suga, you're impossible. Jimin, I'll order. Jungkook, add dessert. Namjoon, you all realize we have work tomorrow. Jin, we have survived worse. Taehyung smiled. He typed one sentence. I'm in. Within seconds, 6 replies appeared. The apartment became quiet again, but the silence no longer felt empty. It felt like breathing after holding his breath for too long. Taehyung looked at the city and smiled. The future remained uncertain. The threats had not disappeared. The people behind the experiment were still somewhere out there. The legal battle was only beginning. The company was unstable. The public was divided. And somewhere in the shadows, someone was undoubtedly preparing their next move. But tonight, none of that mattered more than the simple fact that 7 people were still choosing each other. And for once, nobody was watching the choice except them.